April 15th, 2025. Grizzly bear kills 3 camp counselors in Montana in midnight rampage. The morning of April 10th, 2025, dawned crisp and clear over the Bitterroot Mountains of western Montana, painting the snow-capped peaks in brilliant shades of gold and pink as the sun crested the horizon. Pine Hollow Youth Camp, nestled in a pristine valley 43 miles northeast of Missoula, sat like a postcard image of wilderness perfection among towering Douglas firs and western larches. The facility, established in 1987 by the Montana Youth Development Foundation, sprawled across 240 acres of untouched wilderness, bordered on 3 sides by the Cabinet Yaak ecosystem, one of the most densely populated grizzly bear habitats in the lower 48 states. Camp Director Margaret "Maggie" O'Sullivan, a 54-year-old former park ranger with 28 years of wilderness education experience, stood on the wraparound porch of the main lodge, sipping her morning coffee from a ceramic mug emblazoned with the camp's pine tree logo. Her weathered hands, scarred from decades of outdoor work, gripped the warm ceramic as she surveyed the expansive meadow that served as the camp's central gathering area. In 5 days, 123 children between the ages of 8 and 16 would arrive for the camp's annual Spring Wilderness Immersion program, a 2-week intensive designed to teach urban youth about conservation, survival skills, and the delicate balance of mountain ecosystems. Maggie's steel-grey eyes, sharp as a hawk's and just as observant, swept across the familiar landscape with the practiced gaze of someone who had learned to read the wilderness like others read newspapers. The meadow, roughly 3 acres of natural clearing, surrounded by dense forest, would soon echo with the laughter and shouts of children learning to build fires, identify animal tracks, and navigate by the stars. 24 canvas platform tents, arranged in 4 rows of 6 formed neat lines across the eastern portion of the meadow, each equipped with wooden floors, mesh windows, and heavy-duty zippers designed to keep out insects and small wildlife. The counselor quarters, 8 larger canvas structures positioned at strategic intervals around the perimeter, provided supervision points and emergency shelter locations. Behind her, the main lodge hummed with activity as the advance team of 15 counselors prepared for the arriving campers. The 2-story log building, constructed from locally harvested timber, housed the dining hall, kitchen, medical station, communication center, and staff quarters on the upper floor. Solar panels on the south-facing roof provided supplementary power to the generator system, while a sophisticated water filtration system drew from the crystal-clear Pine Creek that meandered through the camp's northeastern border. Tyler Burns pushed through the lodge's heavy oak doors, carrying a steaming mug of coffee and a clipboard thick with equipment inventories. At 24, Tyler represented everything Pine Hollow sought in its senior counselors: Eagle Scout background, wilderness first aid certification, bachelor's degree in outdoor recreation from the University of Montana, and an infectious enthusiasm for sharing nature's wonders with young people. His sandy brown hair caught the morning light as he approached Maggie, his green eyes bright with the excitement of someone who never tired of the mountains. "Weather Service is calling for clear skies through the weekend," Tyler announced, consulting his clipboard. "Lows in the upper 30s, highs near 70, perfect for the pre-camp setup." He had driven up from Missoula 2 days earlier in his battered Toyota Tacoma, the truck bed loaded with personal gear and supplies for the specialized wilderness survival workshops he would lead. Tyler's reputation as the camp's most knowledgeable instructor in fire-starting techniques, shelter construction, and edible plant identification had been earned through 5 summers of consistently outstanding performance evaluations and 0 safety incidents. Maggie nodded approvingly, her trained ear catching the distant sound of approaching vehicles on the gravel access road that wound 3 miles through dense forest from Highway 200. "That'll be Kelly and Logan with the supply run," she said. recognizing the distinctive rumble of the camp's green Ford F-350 crew cab truck. The vehicle, equipped with four-wheel drive and a custom-built flatbed designed for hauling camping equipment, made weekly runs to Missoula for fresh food, supplies, and mail during operational periods. Kelly Ramirez appeared first as the truck rounded the final bend, her dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail beneath a well-worn Montana State University baseball cap. At 26, Kelly brought urban perspective to Pine Hollow's wilderness mission, having grown up in Phoenix before relocating to Montana for graduate school in environmental education. Her background in city planning and youth development programs made her invaluable for helping urban campers navigate the transition from concrete to forest floor. Kelly's warm brown eyes and ready smile had earned her the nickname Camp Mom among returning campers, though her impressive collection of certifications in rock climbing, swift water rescue, and wilderness emergency medical technician skills proved she was far more than a nurturing presence. Logan Shaw rode shotgun, his tall frame folded into the passenger seat as he consulted a detailed map of the surrounding wilderness area. At 23, Logan was the newest addition to Pine Hollow's senior staff, but his credentials more than compensated for his relative inexperience. A recent graduate of the University of Idaho with degrees in wildlife biology and environmental science, Logan had spent the previous summer working for the Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks Department, conducting grizzly bear population surveys in Glacier National Park. His intimate knowledge of local wildlife behavior patterns and tracking techniques made him responsible for the camp's animal awareness education program. The supply truck pulled to a stop in front of the lodge, dust settling around its tires as Kelly shut off the engine. Both counselors climbed out, stretching muscles cramped from the 3-hour round trip to Missoula and back. The truck bed contained carefully organized boxes of non-perishable foods, medical supplies, craft materials for rainy day activities, and specialized equipment for the advanced wilderness skills workshop scheduled for the second week of camp. Missoula was crazy busy this morning, Kelly announced, pulling her work gloves from her back pocket as she prepared to help unload. Some kind of conference at the university. We had to wait 20 minutes just to get into the grocery store parking lot. Her voice carried the slight accent of her southwestern origins, though 4 years in Montana had softened the edges and added local inflections picked up from friends and colleagues. Logan emerged from the passenger side carrying a manila envelope thick with mail and official documents. His lean build and purposeful movements reflected someone comfortable in the outdoors, though his pale complexion suggested more time spent in libraries and laboratories than on sunny trails. Wire-rimmed glasses perched on his nose gave him a scholarly appearance that belied his extensive field experience tracking apex predators through some of the most remote wilderness areas in North America. County Sheriff's Department had a booth set up outside the post office, Logan reported, sorting through the mail as he spoke. Deputy Martinez said they've had increased grizzly activity reports in the Cabinet Yaak area over the past month. Nothing specific to our location, but they're asking all wilderness facilities to maintain extra vigilance with food storage protocols. He pulled out an official-looking document with the Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks letterhead. This came certified mail. Looks like our annual wildlife safety inspection notification. Maggie accepted the envelope, her experienced fingers quickly breaking the wax seal and extracting the formal notice inside. As camp director, she maintained current certifications in wilderness safety management, emergency response coordination, and wildlife encounter protocols. The state-mandated annual inspection ensured that Pine Hollow met or exceeded all requirements for operating in designated grizzly bear habitat, including proper food storage facilities, bear-resistant garbage containers, emergency communication systems, and staff training in wildlife deterrent techniques. Inspection scheduled for April 28th, Maggie announced after scanning the document. 2 weeks into the camp session, Inspector Janet Clearwater from the Missoula Regional Office. She folded the notice and tucked it into her jacket pocket. We'll need to make sure all protocols are letter perfect by then. The state's been cracking down on wilderness camps since that incident up in Glacier last summer. Tyler's expression grew serious as he recalled the widely publicized encounter that had resulted in the temporary closure of 3 youth camps in northwestern Montana. A subadult male grizzly had gained access to improperly stored food at a private wilderness camp near Lake McDonald, leading to property damage and the emergency evacuation of 47 campers. While no injuries occurred, the incident had prompted comprehensive reviews of food storage protocols at every wilderness facility in grizzly habitat. I've already scheduled refresher training sessions for all staff on bear spray deployment and food handling procedures, Tyler said, consulting his clipboard again. Dr. Hendricks from the university agreed to come up next week for a comprehensive wildlife behavior workshop. She's bringing the new bear deterrent systems they've been testing in Yellowstone. The mention of Dr. Sarah Hendricks brought nods of approval from the assembled counselors. The renowned grizzly bear researcher from the University of Montana's Wildlife Biology program had consulted with Pine Hollow for 3 years, providing cutting-edge insights into bear behavior and the most effective methods for preventing human-wildlife conflicts. Her research on grizzly feeding patterns and territorial behavior had contributed to significant improvements in backcountry safety protocols throughout the northern Rocky Mountain ecosystem. As morning progressed into afternoon, the counselor team threw themselves into the familiar rhythm of pre-camp preparation. The work was physical and demanding, but also deeply satisfying for individuals who had chosen careers devoted to connecting young people with wilderness experiences. Each counselor brought specialized skills and enthusiasm to their assigned responsibilities, creating a collaborative atmosphere that had made Pine Hollow one of the most respected youth outdoor education programs in the Pacific Northwest. Amanda Rodriguez, the 25-year-old head of aquatic programs, spent her morning testing water quality in Pine Creek and inspecting the swimming and fishing areas marked with bright orange buoys. Her background as a former competitive swimmer and certified water safety instructor made her responsible for all creek-based activities, from basic swimming lessons for nervous urban campers to advanced fly fishing instruction for those with previous experience. Amanda's infectious laugh and patient teaching style had earned her a devoted following among returning campers who specifically requested assignment to her aquatic ecology workshops. Meanwhile, David Kim, a 27-year-old former Army Ranger turned wilderness therapist, focused on organizing equipment for the challenge course and team-building activities that formed the foundation of Pine Hollow's character development program. The obstacle course he had designed and constructed over 3 summers included rope climbing challenges, balance beams suspended over creek crossings, and cooperative problem-solving stations that required groups to work together to achieve success. David's military background provided valuable perspective on leadership development and group dynamics, while his gentle demeanor and philosophical approach to conflict resolution made him a trusted mentor figure for troubled teenagers. The afternoon brought a steady stream of activity as counselors completed equipment inventories, tested communication systems, and conducted safety walkthroughs of all facilities. Rachel Thompson, the camp's 24-year-old arts and crafts coordinator, organized supplies for pottery workshops, nature photography sessions, and traditional Native American craft projects developed in consultation with local tribal elders. Her fine arts degree from the University of Washington and extensive training in outdoor education methodologies allowed her to create programs that combined artistic expression with environmental awareness. Sarah Martinez, Pine Hollow's 26-year-old registered nurse and medical officer conducted comprehensive inspections of the medical station and emergency supplies. Her background as an emergency room nurse in Seattle had prepared her for the unique challenges of providing healthcare in remote wilderness settings, where the nearest hospital lay 43 miles away over mountain roads that could become impassable during severe weather. Sarah's calm demeanor under pressure and extensive training in wilderness medicine made her an invaluable member of the leadership team. As evening approached, the counselors gathered in the main lodge for their traditional pre-season dinner and planning session. The dining hall, with its soaring log beam ceiling and massive stone fireplace, provided a warm and welcoming atmosphere for both staff meetings and camper meals. Windows on three sides offered panoramic views of the surrounding mountains, while handcrafted wooden tables and benches accommodated up to 150 people during peak occupancy. Maggie called the group to order as they finished a dinner of grilled salmon, wild rice, and fresh vegetables prepared by camp cook Maria Santos, a 43-year-old culinary school graduate who specialized in nutritious outdoor cooking techniques. Maria's expertise in preparing meals for large groups using propane-powered commercial equipment and wood-fired ovens ensured that Pine Hollow's food program met the highest standards for both nutrition and taste. Tomorrow marks the beginning of our most ambitious season yet, Maggie began, her voice carrying the authority earned through decades of outdoor leadership experience. We have 123 registered campers arriving Sunday, including 37 first-time participants and 18 returning counselors in training from our advanced leadership program. The age range spans from 8-year-old beginners to 16-year-old experts who have completed previous wilderness certification programs. She consulted her leather-bound planning notebook, its pages filled with detailed schedules, emergency contact information, and logistical notes accumulated over months of preparation. Weather forecasts remain favorable through the first week, with typical spring mountain conditions thereafter. We need to be prepared for everything from late-season snow squalls to sudden thunderstorms that can turn creek crossings into dangerous torrents within minutes. Tyler raised his hand to address the group. I've completed final inspections of all tents and shelters. Everything passed structural integrity tests, and we've replaced 3 canvas panels that showed wear from last season's weather. The emergency supply caches at checkpoints Alpha, Bravo, and Charlie have been restocked with fresh water purification tablets, first aid supplies, and emergency rations sufficient for 48 hours. Kelly nodded and added her report. Communication systems tested at 100% reliability this afternoon. We have clear radio contact with the Missoula County Sheriff's Department, Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks Dispatch, and the helicopter landing zone coordinates are programmed into our GPS units. Satellite phone backup tested successfully with clear connections to emergency services. Logan shifted in his seat, his scientific training evident in the meticulous organization of his notes. I've completed comprehensive surveys of wildlife activity in the immediate area. Trail cameras positioned at 6 locations around the camp perimeter recorded normal levels of deer, elk, and small mammal activity. No unusual predator behavior patterns detected, though I did document fresh grizzly bear tracks along Pine Creek, approximately 1.7 miles upstream from our water intake point. The mention of grizzly bear tracks brought a moment of focused attention from all assembled counselors. While bear encounters were an accepted reality of working in the Cabinet Yaak ecosystem, any evidence of large predator activity near camp facilities required careful analysis and appropriate precautionary measures. Track characteristics? Maggie inquired, her tone professional and matter-of-fact rather than alarmed. Logan consulted his field notebook, its waterproof pages filled with precise measurements and detailed observations recorded in neat handwriting. Adult male, estimated body weight between 400 and 500 pounds based on pad width and depth of impressions in soft soil. Tracks approximately 4 days old based on weathering patterns and debris accumulation. Movement patterns suggested normal foraging behavior along the creek corridor, consistent with typical spring feeding patterns as bears emerge from winter dens and seek easily digestible food sources. He flipped to a page containing detailed sketches of the bear tracks, complete with measurements and photographic reference numbers. Claw marks measured 6 inches in length, indicating a mature male in prime physical condition. Gait analysis suggested unhurried movement, stopping frequently to investigate potential food sources, including overturned logs and root systems. No evidence of human-related food conditioning or aggressive territorial marking. Maggie nodded approvingly at Logan's thorough analysis. His scientific background and field experience provided exactly the type of professional wildlife assessment that allowed Pine Hollow to make informed decisions about safety protocols. The presence of grizzly bears in the area was neither unexpected nor necessarily problematic, provided proper precautions were maintained and human activities remained predictable and non-threatening. Standard protocols remain in effect, she announced to the group. All food storage in bear-resistant containers, no exceptions. Kitchen waste disposed of according to established procedures, with all organic material transported to the approved disposal site 5 miles downstream. Staff and campers maintain clean camp discipline at all times, with personal hygiene items and toiletries stored in provided metal lockers. The evening planning session continued for another hour, covering everything from daily activity schedules to emergency evacuation procedures. Each councillor received updated copies of camp policies, medical information for registered campers, and contact information for parents and guardians. The comprehensive preparation process reflected Pine Hollow's commitment to providing transformative wilderness experiences while maintaining the highest possible safety standards. As the meeting concluded, councillors drifted into small groups for informal conversations and last-minute preparation activities. Tyler, Kelly, and Logan gravitated toward the lodge's stone fireplace, where a small fire crackled warmly against the evening chill. The three had developed a close friendship over their years working together, bonded by shared experiences and complementary skills that made them an effective team for managing the camp's most challenging programs. Hard to believe it's been 5 years since my first season here, Tyler mused, settling into a comfortable leather armchair with a fresh cup of coffee. I was so nervous that first summer, convinced I'd make some terrible mistake and endanger everyone. Now it feels like home. His voice carried the contentment of someone who had found their calling in life, matching personal passion with meaningful work that made a difference in young people's lives. Kelly curled up on the nearby couch, pulling a fleece blanket around her shoulders as she reviewed her activity schedules for the upcoming week. I remember you that first summer. You checked and rechecked every knot, every piece of equipment, every weather report. Drove yourself crazy with worry. She smiled fondly at the memory. Now you're the one teaching the nervous new counselors that preparation and attention to detail are what keep everyone safe out here. Logan occupied the remaining chair, his field notebook open on his lap as he transferred the day's observations into a detailed wildlife activity database he maintained for research purposes. His methodical approach to data collection reflected his scientific training, but also served practical purposes for predicting animal behavior patterns and identifying potential safety concerns before they became problems. I've been thinking about Dr. Hendrix's presentation on grizzly bear behavioral adaptations, Logan said, looking up from his notes. Her research on how bears modify their activity patterns in response to human presence could have significant implications for our program schedules. If we can predict when bears are most likely to be active in specific areas, we can adjust hiking routes and outdoor activity timing to minimize encounter risks. Tyler leaned forward with interest. As the counselor responsible for backcountry hiking and survival skills instruction, he was always eager to incorporate new research into practical safety protocols. What did her data suggest about seasonal activity patterns? I know bears are more active during dawn and dusk periods, but are there specific factors that might increase daytime activity levels? Several variables influence activity patterns, Logan explained, warming to the subject of his expertise. Food availability is the primary driver, but weather conditions, breeding cycles, and human disturbance all play roles. Her research showed that grizzlies in areas with regular human activity often shift to increased nocturnal behavior, avoiding daytime contact while maintaining access to preferred feeding areas. The conversation continued as the evening fire burned lower, three young professionals sharing knowledge and perspectives that would help ensure another successful and safe camp season. Outside the lodge windows, the last light of day faded from the mountain peaks, and the first stars appeared in the clear Montana sky. Night sounds gradually replaced daytime bird calls as the wilderness settled into its nocturnal rhythm, owls calling to each other across the valley while small mammals began their evening foraging activities. April 11th arrived with heavy overcast skies and a sharp drop in temperature that reminded everyone that spring in the mountains could revert to winter conditions without warning. Maggie emerged from the lodge at 6:30 in the morning to find frost covering the meadow grass and thin ice forming along the edges of Pine Creek's slower-moving pools. The Weather Service had adjusted their forecast to include possible snow flurries and daytime temperatures struggling to reach 50 degrees. "Weather's turned," she announced, as counselors gathered for morning coffee and the daily briefing. "We need to adjust today's activities accordingly and make sure all outdoor equipment is properly weatherized. Could be a good preview of what we might face during camp sessions." Tyler was already adjusting his daily schedule, substituting indoor survival skills workshops for planned hiking activities. His experience with mountain weather had taught him the importance of flexibility and maintaining productive programs regardless of conditions. "Perfect opportunity to cover fire starting in wet conditions and emergency shelter construction," he said optimistically. "Skills every wilderness enthusiast needs to master." Kelly agreed, grateful for the chance to focus on equipment organization and tent inspections without the pressure of maintaining outdoor activities. The sudden weather change provided an excellent reminder of why Pine Hollow maintained extensive indoor facilities and alternative program options. "I'll use the morning to double-check all tent weatherproofing and stake down anything that might blow around if wind picks up." Logan seemed particularly interested in the weather change, viewing it through the lens of wildlife behavior prediction. Sudden temperature drops often trigger increased animal activity as they seek shelter and conserve energy. "I'll monitor the area more closely today and check trail camera footage for any changes in movement patterns." The day progressed with typical efficiency as counselors adapted their plans to changing conditions. Maria Santos worked her culinary magic in the kitchen, preparing warming soups and fresh bread that filled the lodge with comforting aromas. The indoor atmosphere became cozy and welcoming as counselors completed administrative tasks, organized supplies, and enjoyed the rare opportunity for extended conversations without the pressure of managing active children. By afternoon, light snow began falling, dusting the meadow and surrounding forest with a delicate coating of white that transformed the familiar landscape into something magical and pristine. The snowfall was light but persistent, accumulating just enough to require brushing off vehicles and outdoor equipment. Councillors took turns monitoring weather updates and adjusting plans for the following day based on evolving conditions. "Snow's supposed to clear overnight," Maggie announced during the afternoon staff meeting. "Tomorrow should be partly cloudy with temperatures in the 60s, perfect weather for final preparations before the campers arrive Sunday." She consulted multiple weather sources, cross-referencing local reports with data from automated stations throughout the region to develop the most accurate possible forecast. Tyler welcomed the news, as his final day of preparation included testing all outdoor cooking equipment and conducting a comprehensive safety walkthrough of hiking trails and activity areas. The light snowfall would help identify any potential hazards like loose rocks or unstable footing that might have developed over the winter months. "I'll use tomorrow morning to check trail conditions and update hazard assessments for all backcountry routes." As evening approached, the snow gradually ceased and stars began appearing through breaks in the cloud cover. The temperature dropped into the 20s, creating conditions that would likely produce a brilliant, clear morning once the weather system moved through the area. Councillors gathered again around the lodge fireplace, sharing stories and building the camaraderie that made Pine Hollow such an effective team environment. Kelly pulled out her smartphone and scrolled through social media updates, sharing news and photos from friends and family back home in Phoenix. The contrast between her urban background and current wilderness setting was something she never tired of exploring, and her unique perspective helped bridge the gap for city kids experiencing their first extended time in natural settings. "My sister posted pictures of her kids at a Phoenix park today," she said, showing a photo of children playing on modern playground equipment surrounded by palm trees and urban landscapes. 93 degrees and sunny. Hard to imagine from here, with snow still on the ground and temperatures barely above freezing. Logan looked up from his wildlife research journals, where he was reviewing recent studies on grizzly bear population dynamics in the greater Yellowstone ecosystem. Climate variation between urban and wilderness environments is one of the most challenging adjustments for new campers. Kids from warm cities often struggle with morning temperatures in the 40s and 50s, especially when they're sleeping in tents. Tyler nodded in agreement, remembering his own adjustment period when he first moved to Montana from his native California. The gear talks we do during orientation make a huge difference. Teaching kids how to layer clothing and regulate body temperature prevents most comfort issues that could otherwise impact their wilderness experience negatively. The conversation drifted through various topics as the evening progressed, three friends and colleagues sharing the comfortable familiarity of individuals who had worked together through challenging situations and built mutual respect and trust. Outside, the clear skies produced a spectacular display of stars, unmarred by light pollution, while the temperature continued dropping toward what would likely be the last hard freeze of the spring season. April 12th dawned crystalline, clear and brilliantly cold, with ice crystals coating every surface and creating a winter wonderland that would melt away within hours once the sun gained strength. Maggie stepped onto the lodge porch at first light to find the thermometer reading 18 degrees Fahrenheit, cold enough to freeze exposed water pipes if they hadn't been properly insulated for winter conditions. The sunrise painted the snow-dusted peaks in shades of rose and gold that gradually warmed to yellow and white as the sun cleared the eastern ridgeline. By 8 o'clock, the temperature had risen to 32 degrees and snow was beginning to sublimate from exposed surfaces, creating wisps of vapor that rose like smoke from the warming ground. Tyler emerged from his cabin dressed in layers suitable for fluctuating temperatures, carrying his day pack loaded with trail maintenance tools and safety equipment. His planned inspection of backcountry hiking routes would take most of the day, covering approximately 15 miles of trails that ranged from easy to difficult nature walks suitable for young children to challenging mountain routes designed for experienced hikers. Perfect conditions for final trail assessments, he announced, breath visible in the cold air as he spoke. The snow will highlight any problem areas, and I'll have excellent visibility once it melts off. His enthusiasm for the work was evident in his eager preparation and detailed planning. Kelly focused her morning on final tent inspections and campsite organization, ensuring that every platform was level, properly drained, and equipped with adequate tie-down points for securing gear during possible wind events. Her methodical approach reflected both professional training and personal experience with outdoor equipment failures that could ruin wilderness experiences for unprepared campers. Logan continued his wildlife monitoring activities, checking trail cameras and documenting any evidence of animal activity that might require program adjustments or enhanced safety measures. His scientific approach to wildlife management provided valuable data for making informed decisions about backcountry access and activity scheduling based on actual rather than assumed animal behavior patterns. The morning passed quickly as each counselor pursued their specialized preparation activities. By midday, the temperature had risen to 58 degrees, and most of the snow had disappeared except for shaded areas and northern exposures, where it would persist until late afternoon. The dramatic weather change from winter to spring conditions within 12 hours provided a vivid reminder of the mountain environment's variability and the importance of maintaining flexible programs capable of adapting to changing conditions. Tyler returned from his trail inspection shortly after 2 o'clock, his face flushed with exertion and fresh air, carrying a notebook filled with detailed observations and several small samples of questionable plants he wanted Logan to help identify. "Trails are in excellent condition," he reported to Maggie, who was coordinating supply deliveries from the lodge office. "Minor maintenance needed on 2 creek crossings, where spring runoff has shifted some stepping stones, but nothing that can't be fixed in an hour or 2. He consulted his notes, which included GPS coordinates, hazard assessments, and recommendations for group size limitations on more challenging routes. "The advanced hiking trail to Devil's Backbone Ridge is clear and safe, but I'd recommend limiting groups to 8 participants maximum due to some narrow sections where passing room is limited. The family nature trail along Pine Creek needs 1 fallen branch removed, but otherwise it's perfect for beginning hikers." Logan examined Tyler's plant samples with the careful attention of a trained botanist, using field identification guides and his extensive knowledge of regional flora to determine species and potential toxicity levels. "This appears to be young death calmers," he concluded after several minutes of examination, "which is highly toxic if ingested. I'll mark the location for removal or clear signage before campers arrive." Kelly joined the group, carrying a comprehensive list of her own inspection results and preparation activities. "All tents and platforms passed structural integrity tests," she reported. "I replaced 4 tent zippers that were showing wear and reinforced several tie-down points that had loosened over the winter. Camper accommodations are ready for occupancy." The afternoon brought a steady stream of supply deliveries as local vendors completed final orders for fresh food, fuel, and miscellaneous supplies needed for the camp's opening weekend. Maria Santos supervised the food deliveries with meticulous attention to quality and quantity, ensuring that her carefully planned menus would have all necessary ingredients available at the right time throughout the 2-week camp session. Evening approached with clear skies and moderate temperatures that promised excellent conditions for the campers' arrival in 2 days. Counselors gathered for their final pre-season dinner and briefing, the atmosphere combining professional anticipation with the comfortable camaraderie of an experienced team preparing to do work they genuinely loved. Maggie addressed the group with the confident authority of someone who had successfully managed similar operations for nearly 3 decades. "Tomorrow, we complete final preparations and conduct our comprehensive emergency response drill. Sunday morning at 9 o'clock, we welcome 123 young people whose lives we have the opportunity to influence in positive and lasting ways. She paused to make eye contact with each counsellor individually, emphasizing the personal responsibility and professional commitment required for successful outdoor education. Our mission extends beyond teaching wilderness skills or environmental awareness. We're providing experiences that build confidence, create lasting friendships, and develop respect for the natural world that will influence decision-making for decades to come. Tyler felt the familiar surge of excitement and responsibility that marked the beginning of each camp season. His role as senior wilderness skills instructor carried significant weight in determining the success of Pine Hollow's educational mission, and he took pride in maintaining programs that challenged campers while keeping them completely safe throughout their wilderness experience. Kelly experienced similar feelings of anticipation, mixed with the practical satisfaction of knowing that every detail of camper accommodations and daily logistics had been carefully planned and thoroughly prepared. Her background in urban youth development provided valuable perspective on the transformative potential of wilderness experiences for children whose daily lives rarely included extended time in natural settings. Logan approached the beginning of camp season from his unique perspective as both wildlife researcher and educator. His dual role involved ensuring camper safety around potentially dangerous wildlife, while also providing educational opportunities that fostered understanding and respect for the complex ecosystems that made Pine Hollow such a special place. The evening progressed with final planning discussions, equipment checks, and the quiet confidence of professionals who had prepared thoroughly for the challenges and rewards ahead. Outside the lodge, the mountain night settled over Pine Hollow with the pristine stillness that made the wilderness such a powerful teacher for those willing to listen and learn. April 13th arrived with perfect spring mountain weather, clear skies, moderate temperatures, and the kind of brilliant sunshine that made Montana's wilderness reputation well-deserved. Maggie emerged early for her morning assessment of conditions and final preparation priorities, finding the thermometer reading a comfortable 43 degrees at 6:30, with weather forecasts calling for highs near 75 degrees and light variable winds. The final day of preparation began with comprehensive emergency response training that tested every aspect of Pine Hollow's crisis management capabilities. Tyler coordinated the exercise from the communications center, while Maggie played the role of injured camper, requiring immediate medical attention and emergency evacuation. The drill tested radio communications with outside agencies, medical response protocols, helicopter landing zone procedures, and staff coordination under simulated emergency conditions. Kelly assumed command of camper management during the simulated emergency, demonstrating her ability to maintain order and provide reassurance, while other staff handled medical and evacuation responsibilities. Her calm demeanor and clear communication skills proved essential for preventing panic and ensuring that campers would receive appropriate care and supervision during actual emergency situations. Logan's role involved assessment and management of potential wildlife hazards that might complicate emergency response, including strategies for clearing evacuation routes and maintaining safe perimeters around medical treatment areas. His knowledge of animal behavior patterns and deterrent techniques provided crucial capabilities for managing complex situations where human emergencies occurred in proximity to potentially dangerous wildlife. Sarah Martinez led the medical response simulation with professional competence that reflected her extensive emergency room experience and specialized wilderness medicine training. Working with limited equipment in outdoor conditions, she demonstrated proper techniques for stabilizing injuries, managing pain, and preparing patients for helicopter evacuation from remote locations. The comprehensive drill lasted 3 hours and tested every major component of Pine Hollow's emergency response plan under realistic conditions. When Maggie called the exercise to a conclusion, all participants felt confident in their abilities to manage actual emergencies with competence and coordination. The thorough preparation provided essential peace of mind for counselors who would be responsible for the safety and welfare of more than 100 children in wilderness settings. "Outstanding performance by everyone," Maggie announced, as counselors gathered for debriefing and final preparation assignments. Response times met or exceeded all target standards, and coordination between team members was flawless. "I'm completely confident in our ability to handle any situation that might develop during camp operations." Tyler felt particularly satisfied with the communications testing, which had demonstrated reliable contact with emergency services under various conditions, simulated conditions, including equipment failure and severe weather interference. Radio backup systems performed perfectly, and satellite phone connections were clear and stable. "We have redundant capabilities for maintaining contact with outside support, regardless of circumstances." The afternoon focused on final equipment distribution, activity area preparation, and completion of administrative tasks that would allow counselors to focus entirely on camper programs once the session began. Each counselor received complete rosters with detailed information about their assigned campers, including medical conditions, dietary restrictions, experience levels, and special interests that could be incorporated into personalized wilderness education experiences. Logan completed final wildlife area assessments and updated his comprehensive database with current information about animal activity patterns, feeding areas, and potential hazard zones requiring enhanced supervision or access restrictions. His systematic approach to wildlife management ensured that camper activities could proceed with appropriate safety measures while still providing meaningful opportunities to observe and learn about native species in their natural habitats. As evening approached, counselors gathered for a celebration dinner featuring Maria Santos's spectacular preparation of locally sourced grilled trout, wild rice pilaf, fresh asparagus, and homemade blackberry pie made from berries picked and preserved during the previous summer's camp sessions. The meal represented both the culmination of intensive preparation and the beginning of another transformative camp experience. Tyler raised his coffee mug in a toast to his colleagues and friends. "To another season of changing lives through wilderness education," he said, his voice carrying the sincere appreciation for meaningful work that made Pine Hollow such a special place. "May we provide safe, challenging, and unforgettable experiences for every camper who trusts us with their wilderness adventure." Kelly and Logan joined the toast, along with all assembled counselors who shared the commitment to excellence that made Pine Hollow one of the most respected youth outdoor education programs in the region. Outside the lodge windows, stars appeared in the clear mountain sky, and the first owl calls echoed across the valley as night settled over the wilderness that would soon ring with the voices of children discovering the natural world's wonders. The final evening of preparation concluded with quiet conversations around the dying fireplace as counselors shared anticipations for the upcoming session and reflections on previous year's memorable experiences. Tyler, Kelly, and Logan found themselves again drawn to the comfortable seating area near the stone hearth, where they had spent many evenings over the years planning programs, solving problems, and building the friendships that made their work so rewarding. "Feels different this year somehow," Kelly mused, curling up in her favorite chair with a warm fleece blanket. "Maybe it's because we've been doing this long enough to really appreciate how special it is. Not just the job, but the whole experience of sharing wilderness with kids who might never get another chance like this." Tyler nodded thoughtfully, understanding the sense of increased responsibility and deeper appreciation that came with experience and maturity. I keep thinking about the kids we'll meet tomorrow and wondering which ones will have their lives completely changed by these 2 weeks. There's always at least one camper who discovers something about themselves or the natural world that influences everything they do afterward. Logan looked up from his evening reading, a recently published research paper on grizzly bear behavioral adaptations to climate change in the northern Rocky Mountains. The intersection of human development and wildlife conservation is becoming more complex every year. Programs like Pine Hollow may be some of the last opportunities for young people to develop genuine connections with intact ecosystems before development and climate change alter these environments permanently. The conversation continued in the comfortable rhythm of friends who had shared many such evenings, combining professional passion with personal reflection as they prepared to begin another chapter in their ongoing commitment to wilderness education. Outside, the mountain night embraced Pine Hollow with the timeless serenity that made it such a powerful setting for transformation and learning. Sunday, April 14th, dawned bright and clear, with perfect conditions for welcoming Pine Hollow's newest group of wilderness adventurers. Maggie stood on the lodge porch at sunrise, watching the golden light spread across the meadow, where camper tents stood ready for occupancy, their clean canvas walls and organized platforms representing months of careful preparation and anticipation. The temperature at 6 o'clock read 52 degrees, with forecasts calling for another spectacular spring day, with highs in the mid-70s, and light winds that would provide ideal conditions for outdoor orientation activities and initial wilderness skills instruction. A gentle breeze carried the fresh scents of pine needles, wildflowers, and mountain air that would soon become familiar fragrances for urban children experiencing their first extended time in natural settings. By 8 o'clock, counselors had completed final preparation tasks and gathered in the main lodge for coffee, breakfast, and last-minute coordination before the first busloads of campers arrived from Missoula at 9 o'clock. The atmosphere combined professional readiness with barely contained excitement as experienced outdoor educators prepared to share their passion with a new generation of potential wilderness enthusiasts. Tyler checked and rechecked his orientation materials, which included laminated safety cards, wilderness skills demonstration equipment, and carefully organized supplies for introductory fire starting and basic survival technique workshops. His 5 years of experience at Pine Hollow had taught him that first impressions were crucial for establishing credibility and enthusiasm that would carry through the entire camp experience. Kelly reviewed her camper accommodation assignments and logistics schedules with the methodical attention to detail that had made her indispensable for managing the complex daily operations of housing, feeding, and supervising more than 100 energetic children in wilderness conditions. Her background in urban youth development provided valuable insights into the adjustment challenges facing city kids during their transition to outdoor living. Logan organized his wildlife education materials and completed final safety assessments of areas where campers would have supervised opportunities to observe native species in their natural habitats. His scientific background and field research experience allowed him to provide educational experiences that were both thrilling and completely safe for participants with varying levels of outdoor experience. At 9 o'clock precisely, the rumble of diesel engines announced the arrival of the first chartered bus carrying 38 campers from Missoula and surrounding communities. The vehicle navigated the winding gravel access road with careful precision, its professional driver experienced in delivering precious cargo to wilderness destinations throughout Montana and neighboring states. Maggie stepped forward to greet the bus as it pulled to a stop in the designated arrival area beside the main lodge. The doors opened with a hydraulic hiss, and the first group of Pine Hollow's newest wilderness adventurers began descending the steps, their faces showing mixtures of excitement, nervousness, and curiosity about the natural paradise that would be their home for the next 2 weeks. "Welcome to Pine Hollow Youth Camp," Maggie called out in her warm but authoritative voice, immediately establishing the combination of friendliness and competent leadership that characterized successful outdoor education programs. "I'm Maggie O'Sullivan, your camp director, and I'm excited to begin this wilderness adventure with all of you." Tyler, Kelly, and Logan flanked Maggie as they welcomed the arriving campers. Their practiced teamwork evident in the smooth coordination of baggage handling, registration processing, and initial orientation activities that would set the tone for the entire camp experience. Each counselor wore the distinctive Pine Hollow staff shirt, forest green, with the camp logo embroidered in gold, that identified them as trusted guides and safety resources throughout the campers' wilderness journey. Among the first group of arrivals was 8-year-old Marcus Chen from Missoula, making his first ever trip away from home without his parents. His wide eyes took in the towering trees, snow-capped mountain peaks, and pristine meadow with wonder that reminded all the counselors why they had chosen careers in wilderness education. Marcus clutched a small backpack containing carefully selected comfort items approved by camp policies, including a favorite stuffed animal and family photos that would help him adjust to sleeping in an unfamiliar tent. 15-year-old Jessica Rodriguez from Billings represented the opposite end of the age spectrum, arriving for her 3rd consecutive summer at Pine Hollow, with the confidence of someone who had already discovered her passion for wilderness activities. Her previous experiences had included successful completion of advanced hiking challenges, wilderness survival certifications, and leadership roles in group activities that made her a valuable mentor for nervous newcomers. The morning continued with steady arrivals as additional buses delivered campers from communities throughout western Montana and neighboring states. Each new group brought its own mixture of personalities, experience levels, and backgrounds that would contribute to Pine Hollow's diverse and dynamic camp community. Counselors worked efficiently to process registrations, assign tent accommodations, and begin the orientation activities that would help everyone adjust to their new wilderness home. By 11 o'clock, all 123 campers had arrived and been assigned to their accommodations under the supervision of their designated counselors. The meadow buzzed with activity as young people explored their canvas tents, met their tent mates, and began the process of organizing their personal belongings according to camp policies designed to maintain cleanliness and prevent problems with food-conditioned wildlife. Tyler gathered his assigned group of 15 campers for the first Wilderness Skills orientation session, which would cover basic safety procedures, fire prevention guidelines, and introduction to the natural environment surrounding Pine Hollow. His group included participants ranging from 10 to 16 years old, with experience levels varying from complete beginners to accomplished hikers who had completed previous wilderness programs. "The most important thing to remember during your stay at Pine Hollow," Tyler began, his voice carrying easily across the circle of attentive faces, "is that we are visitors in the home of many wild animals. Bears, mountain lions, elk, deer, and dozens of smaller species live in this ecosystem year-round. Our job is to enjoy learning about their world while respecting their needs and maintaining everyone's safety." He held up a bright red canister of bear spray, the industry-standard deterrent device that all Pine Hollow staff carried whenever they ventured beyond the immediate camp area. "This is bear spray, a specialized pepper spray designed to deter aggressive wildlife encounters. All counselors are trained in its proper use, and we maintain multiple units in strategic locations throughout the camp. You should never touch or attempt to use bear spray without direct supervision, but it's important to know what it is and why we carry it." 12-year-old Amanda Foster from Great Falls raised her hand with the kind of earnest question that made Tyler love his work. "Have you ever actually had to use bear spray on a real bear?" she asked, her voice mixing curiosity with just enough nervousness to show she was taking the safety information seriously. Tyler smiled reassuringly while maintaining the serious tone appropriate for discussing wildlife safety. In 5 summers working at Pine Hollow, I've never had to deploy bear spray in an actual encounter, he replied honestly. The deterrent effect comes primarily from following proper food storage procedures, maintaining clean camps, and making appropriate noise when hiking so we don't surprise any animals that might be feeding or resting along the trails. Kelly's group orientation focused on daily logistics, tent living guidelines, and the practical aspects of wilderness camping that would determine whether campers had comfortable and enjoyable experiences or struggled with preventable problems throughout their stay. Her patience and attention to detail made her particularly effective with younger campers who needed extra support adjusting to life away from familiar home environments. Your tent is your home for the next 2 weeks, she explained to her circle of 12 campers, ranging in age from 8 to 14 years old. Keeping it organized, clean, and properly secured will ensure that you sleep well, stay dry if it rains, and avoid problems with insects or curious small animals that might investigate interesting smells from improperly stored food or toiletries. She demonstrated proper tent zipper operation, emphasizing the importance of keeping openings securely closed whenever tents were unoccupied. Curious chipmunks, squirrels, and pack rats are excellent climbers and very persistent when they detect food odors, Kelly explained with a smile that acknowledged the humor while maintaining the serious message. A single granola bar left in a tent can result in significant damage from small animals determined to reach what they perceive as an easy meal. Logan's wildlife education presentation combined scientific accuracy with age-appropriate enthusiasm for the remarkable diversity of species that called the Pine Hollow ecosystem home. His background in wildlife biology allowed him to provide detailed information about animal behavior patterns, ecological relationships, and conservation challenges that threatened many native species throughout the northern Rocky Mountain region. The grizzly bear is the apex predator in this ecosystem, Logan explained to his group of 14 advanced campers who had requested assignment to his specialized wildlife biology workshops. Adult males can weigh up to 800 pounds and possess strength, speed, and sensory capabilities that make them incredibly effective hunters and foragers. However, they are also intelligent animals that typically avoid confrontations with humans when given appropriate warning and respect for their space. 16-year-old Derek Martinez from Helena had completed previous wilderness programs and approached Logan with the kind of informed questions that made teaching particularly rewarding. What specific behaviors indicate that a bear might be defending territory or cubs? He asked, his question demonstrating genuine interest in understanding wildlife behavior rather than sensationalizing potential dangers. Logan appreciated the thoughtful inquiry and used it as an opportunity to provide detailed information about bear communication methods and warning signs. Defensive behaviors include jaw popping, ear flattening, head lowering, and false charging, he explained, using hand gestures to illustrate the postures and movements he described. However, the most important factor in preventing dangerous encounters is maintaining appropriate distance and making noise to avoid surprising bears in areas where they might be feeding, resting, or caring for cubs. The first day continued with tent assignments, meal orientation, and initial activity samplings that would help campers choose their preferred workshops and specialized programs for the remainder of their Pine Hollow experience. The lunch preparation provided an excellent introduction to Maria Santos's outstanding wilderness cuisine, featuring grilled hamburgers and veggie burgers, fresh corn on the cob, potato salad, and her famous chocolate chip cookies that had become legendary among returning campers. Afternoon activities included supervised exploration of the immediate camp area, basic wilderness skills demonstrations, and free time for campers to adjust to their new environment, while counselors observed group dynamics and individual adjustment patterns that would guide program modifications and specialized attention throughout the session. Tyler led a group hike along the Pine Creek Nature Trail, providing introductory instruction in wildlife tracking, plant identification, and basic navigation skills using map and compass rather than electronic devices. The gentle trail offered perfect conditions for building confidence while teaching fundamental wilderness skills that would support more advanced activities later in the camp session. Kelly organized camp logistics activities, including tent inspection, proper food storage procedures, and distribution of camp supplies like water bottles, flashlights, and personal first aid kits containing band-aids, antiseptic wipes, and basic medications for minor injuries or discomfort. Her systematic approach ensured that every camper understood expectations and possessed necessary equipment for safe participation in all planned activities. Logan conducted advanced wildlife observation sessions for experienced campers, using spotting scopes and binoculars to identify bird species, study elk feeding behavior in distant meadows, and discuss ecological relationships that maintained the complex balance of mountain forest ecosystems. His scientific expertise provided educational depth that challenged advanced participants while fostering appreciation for conservation efforts. Evening brought the first campfire gathering, a Pine Hollow tradition that combined storytelling, group singing, and educational presentations about the natural world surrounding the camp. The large fire ring in the center of the meadow provided seating for all campers and staff, while the crackling flames and rising sparks created magical atmosphere that made wilderness experiences memorable for participants who had never spent time around outdoor fires. Maggie addressed the assembled group with welcoming remarks that established expectations and highlighted the transformative potential of wilderness education when approached with appropriate attitudes and commitment. Her decades of experience provided credibility and warmth that helped nervous campers relax while challenging experienced participants to expand their comfort zones and skill levels. Over the next 2 weeks, you'll have opportunities to try new activities, learn skills that could save your life in emergency situations, and develop friendships with people who share your appreciation for the natural world, she announced, her voice carrying clearly across the circle of attentive faces illuminated by firelight. Some of you will discover passions that influence career choices and lifetime interests. Others will simply gain confidence and memories that enrich your lives for decades to come. Tyler contributed to the evening program with demonstrations of traditional fire-starting techniques using flint and steel, bow drill methods, and other primitive technologies that required skill, patience, and understanding of natural materials. His presentations always fascinated campers accustomed to modern conveniences, while teaching practical skills that connected them with historical survival methods used by indigenous peoples and early settlers. Kelly led group singing activities that included traditional camp songs, environmental awareness music, and interactive rounds that encouraged participation from even the shyest campers. Her warm soprano voice and guitar accompaniment created inclusive atmospheres where everyone could contribute regardless of musical experience or confidence levels. Logan concluded the evening program with astronomy presentations that took advantage of Pine Hollow's pristine skies, unmarred by light pollution from urban areas. Using laser pointers and star charts, he guided campers through identification of major constellations, planets visible with naked eye observation, and discussion of how indigenous cultures used astronomical knowledge for navigation and seasonal planning. As the campfire burned down to glowing coals, campers dispersed to their tents under counselor supervision, beginning their first night of wilderness camping with varying degrees of excitement and nervousness. The sounds of settling young people gradually gave way to natural nighttime sounds. Owls calling across the valley, coyotes singing in distant draws, and the gentle whisper of wind through pine needles that would soon become a comforting lullaby for children learning to sleep under canvas rather than solid roofs. Tyler, Kelly, and Logan completed their final safety rounds, checking that all campers were settled and comfortable before retreating to their own accommodations for well-earned rest after a successful first day of camp operations. Their quarters, positioned strategically around the camp perimeter, allowed immediate response to any problems while providing necessary privacy and personal time for counselors who would be on duty 24 hours a day throughout the camp session. Monday, April 15th began with spectacular dawn weather that promised another perfect day for outdoor wilderness education activities. The temperature at sunrise registered 48 degrees, with clear skies and light winds that would allow comfortable hiking and extended time outside for all planned programs. Maggie emerged early to assess conditions and coordinate the day's expanded activity schedule now that all campers had arrived and completed initial orientation processes. The morning routine began at 6:30 with gentle wake-up calls as counselors moved through the tent areas, encouraging campers to begin their daily preparation rituals. The communal bathroom facilities included hot showers, modern plumbing, and sufficient space to accommodate the morning rush without creating long delays or uncomfortable crowding that could impact daily schedule adherence. Breakfast featured Maria Santos's signature wilderness cuisine: thick-cut bacon, scrambled eggs, hash browns made from locally grown potatoes, fresh fruit salad, and unlimited coffee, hot chocolate, and fruit juices. The dining hall buzzed with animated conversations as campers shared first-night experiences and discussed their choices for morning activity programs. Tyler announced the schedule for his Wilderness Survival Skills workshop, which would include instruction in emergency shelter construction, water purification techniques, and edible plant identification using species native to the Pine Hollow ecosystem. His program attracted 15 campers with various experience levels who were eager to learn practical skills that could prove valuable during emergency situations in wilderness settings. Today, we'll focus on the fundamental survival priorities that determine whether someone survives or perishes when lost or stranded in wilderness. Environments, Tyler explained, as his group gathered near the equipment storage area beside the main lodge. Shelter, water, fire, and food represent the basic needs that must be addressed in order of urgency, depending on weather conditions, available resources, and individual physical condition. Kelly organized her group for extended hiking activities along intermediate-level trails that would provide cardiovascular exercise, wildlife observation opportunities, and geographic education about the diverse ecosystems represented within Pine Hollow's expansive boundaries. Her 12 participants included both newcomers eager for adventure and returning campers ready to tackle more challenging routes than they had attempted during previous summers. Logan prepared for advanced wildlife tracking workshops that would teach participants to identify animal signs, interpret behavioral evidence, and develop skills used by professional wildlife biologists for population monitoring and research activities. His scientific background allowed him to provide detailed information about tracking techniques while maintaining appropriate safety awareness in areas where dangerous wildlife might be encountered. The morning progressed with typical energy and enthusiasm as campers dispersed to their chosen activities under careful counselor supervision. Radio communications maintained constant contact between activity groups and the base camp communications center, ensuring rapid response capabilities for any problems or emergency situations that might develop during off-site programs. Tyler's survival skills group hiked to a secluded meadow approximately 1 mile from the main camp, where mature forest provided abundant natural materials for shelter construction projects. The location offered excellent teaching opportunities while remaining close enough to base facilities for easy evacuation in case of weather changes or medical emergencies requiring immediate professional attention. Emergency shelter construction requires assessment of available materials, weather protection needs, and energy conservation principles, Tyler explained as campers examined fallen logs, pine boughs, and other resources scattered around the forest floor. The goal is creating adequate protection from wind, rain, and temperature extremes, using only materials that can be gathered without tools or specialized equipment. 14-year-old Sarah Kim from Bozeman raised her hand with a practical question that demonstrated excellent understanding of survival priorities. How do you decide between spending energy on building elaborate shelter versus finding or creating other necessities like fire and water? She asked, showing the kind of critical thinking that made Tyler's teaching particularly rewarding. Excellent question, Tyler responded enthusiastically. Survival situations require constant evaluation of priorities based on immediate threats to life and health. In below freezing conditions, shelter becomes the top priority because hypothermia can be fatal within hours. In hot weather with no available water, finding or purifying water sources takes precedence because dehydration leads to death more quickly than exposure to elements. Kelly's hiking group followed established trails towards scenic overlooks that would provide spectacular views of the surrounding mountain wilderness while teaching navigation skills, leave no trace principles, and ecological awareness appropriate for their intermediate skill levels. Her route planning considered group fitness levels, weather conditions, and timing that would allow return to camp with adequate time for lunch and afternoon activities. The hiking trail wound through diverse forest ecosystems, transitioning from dense Douglas fir stands near camp to more open ponderosa pine areas at higher elevations. Kelly used the changing vegetation patterns to explain ecological concepts like elevation zones, species adaptation strategies, and the complex interrelationships that maintained forest health and biological diversity. Notice how the tree species change as we gain elevation, Kelly pointed out, as the group paused at a scenic rest stop approximately 2 miles from camp. Douglas fir dominates the lower elevations where moisture is more abundant, while ponderosa pine and lodgepole pine become more common at higher elevations, where conditions are drier and temperature fluctuations are more extreme. Logan's wildlife tracking workshop ventured into areas where animal activity was most likely to provide fresh sign for educational purposes. His route selection balanced educational opportunities with safety considerations, avoiding areas where recent bear activity might create dangerous encounter risks while still providing authentic wildlife learning experiences. Using GPS units and detailed topographic maps, Logan guided his group to a series of game trails and water sources where multiple species regularly traveled and fed. The diverse habitat provided excellent opportunities to study tracking techniques while observing the complex ecological relationships that sustained healthy wildlife populations in mountain ecosystems. Fresh deer tracks in soft soil provide perfect examples of aging techniques used by professional wildlife biologists, Logan explained as the group examined clear hoof prints along a muddy creek bank. By analyzing track depth, edge sharpness, and debris accumulation, we can estimate when these animals passed through this location and gain insights into their behavior patterns. 16-year-old Alex Thompson from Kalispell, who had expressed interest in pursuing wildlife biology as a college major, asked detailed questions about track aging methodology that demonstrated genuine academic interest rather than casual curiosity. What specific factors influence track preservation in different soil types and weather conditions? He inquired, pulling out a notebook to record Logan's detailed explanations. Logan appreciated the opportunity to provide college-level information to a motivated student. Track preservation depends on soil moisture, temperature fluctuations, precipitation, wind exposure, and the weight and gait of the animal that created them, he explained thoroughly. Clay soils hold detailed impressions longer than sandy soils, while frozen ground may preserve tracks for weeks if protected from direct sunlight and precipitation. As midday approached, all activity groups began their scheduled returns to base camp for lunch and afternoon program rotations that would allow campers to experience different educational offerings and work with various counselors throughout their Pine Hollow stay. The coordinated timing ensured efficient use of dining facilities while maintaining program variety and appropriate supervision ratios for all activities. Lunch featured grilled chicken breast sandwiches, fresh vegetables grown in local organic gardens, homemade soup, and Maria Santos's popular oatmeal cookies that provided energy for afternoon adventures. The communal dining experience encouraged interaction between campers from different activity groups while allowing counselors to monitor adjustment levels and identify individuals who might need additional support or program modifications. Tyler debriefed his morning survival skills group, reviewing lessons learned and previewing afternoon activities that would build upon morning instruction with practical applications and hands-on skill development. This afternoon we'll work on primitive fire-starting techniques using materials you gathered during our shelter construction exercises, he announced, generating excited anticipation among participants eager to master traditional skills. Kelly discussed her group's hiking experiences and planned route modifications for their afternoon outdoor navigation workshop. We'll use topographic maps and compass techniques to practice route-finding skills that don't depend on electronic devices, she explained, emphasizing the importance of traditional navigation methods for wilderness safety and self-reliance. Logan prepared his afternoon wildlife observation program using spotting scopes and binoculars to study animal behavior from safe distances while learning scientific observation and data recording techniques. We'll set up observation stations where we can watch elk feeding behavior and practice the systematic data collection methods used by professional wildlife researchers, he announced to his enthusiastic group. The afternoon programs proceeded with similar energy and educational focus as morning activities, though rotating group assignments allowed campers to experience different teaching styles and specialized knowledge areas represented by Pine Hollow's diverse counselor team. Cross-training opportunities ensured that all participants received comprehensive wilderness education regardless of their primary activity preferences. Tyler's fire-starting workshop proved particularly popular as campers learned to create fire using primitive techniques including bow drill, flint and steel, and friction methods that required practice and understanding of tinder preparation, oxygen flow principles, and fuel management strategies. The skills demanded patience and persistence that taught valuable lessons about traditional technologies and problem-solving approaches. Successful primitive fire starting requires dry tinder, proper technique, and persistence, Tyler explained, as campers worked with their individual bow drill sets constructed from materials gathered during morning activities. The friction method generates heat that ignites carefully prepared tinder, which then spreads to kindling and finally to larger fuel materials that sustain the fire for cooking or warmth. Kelly's navigation workshop used topographic maps specific to the Pine Hollow area, teaching campers to identify terrain features, calculate distances and elevation changes, and plot courses using compass bearings that would guide them accurately through unfamiliar terrain. The practical skills provided essential safety knowledge while building confidence for more advanced hiking activities. Understanding topographic map symbols and contour line interpretation allows precise navigation even in areas without established trails, Kelly explained, as campers practiced identifying ridges, valleys, creek drainages, and other terrain features represented on their maps. These skills can literally save your life if you become lost or separated from your group during wilderness activities. Logan's wildlife observation sessions provided opportunities to study elk, deer, and various bird species through high-quality optics while learning behavioral interpretation techniques and scientific recording methods used by professional researchers. The hands-on experience with field research methodologies appealed particularly to campers considering science careers or advanced academic programs. As afternoon activities concluded and campers returned to base camp for dinner preparation, counselors compared notes and discussed individual participant progress, group dynamics, and program adjustments that might enhance educational effectiveness for the remainder of the camp session. The collaborative approach ensured that every camper received appropriate attention and challenge levels tailored to their individual needs and interests. Evening approached with continued clear weather and moderate temperatures ideal for outdoor activities, and the second campfire program that would feature different educational content and entertainment options than the previous night's presentation. The rotation system ensured variety while maintaining the magical atmosphere that made evening gatherings memorable highlights of the Pine Hollow experience. Dinner showcased Maria Santos's expertise with a special meal featuring grilled trout caught from Pine Creek under appropriate permits and regulations, wild rice pilaf, fresh asparagus, dinner rolls baked in the camp's wood-fired oven, and strawberry shortcake made with locally sourced berries. The feast represented the quality and care that made Pine Hollow's food program legendary among wilderness camps throughout the region. Tyler contributed to the evening campfire program with storytelling that combined outdoor adventure themes with subtle safety education and character development messages appropriate for the diverse age ranges represented in the camp population. His narrative skills and authentic outdoor experiences provided credibility that kept campers engaged, while reinforcing important lessons about wilderness safety and environmental responsibility. Kelly led group activities that included interactive games, collaborative challenges, and music that encouraged participation from campers with varying comfort levels and personal interests. Her inclusive approach ensured that shy participants felt welcomed, while providing leadership opportunities for more confident individuals who could help others feel included in group activities. Logan's evening presentation focused on nocturnal wildlife behavior, using red-filtered flashlights to minimize light pollution while discussing the fascinating adaptations that allowed various species to thrive during nighttime hours when most humans were sleeping. His scientific knowledge provided educational depth while maintaining age-appropriate presentation styles that kept younger campers engaged and learning. As the second campfire gathering concluded and campers prepared for another night of tent camping, counselors noted improved comfort levels and reduced homesickness among participants who had successfully completed their first 24 hours away from familiar home environments. The positive adjustment patterns indicated excellent potential for meaningful learning and personal growth throughout the remainder of the camp session. Tyler, Kelly, and Logan completed their evening safety rounds with growing confidence in the group dynamics and individual adjustment patterns they observed among their assigned campers. The successful completion of the first full day of programming provided strong foundation for expanding activity complexity and challenge levels as participants developed skills and comfort with wilderness living. The three friends gathered briefly on the lodge porch before retiring to their quarters, sharing observations and discussing minor program adjustments that would enhance educational effectiveness while maintaining the safety standards that made Pine Hollow's reputation well-deserved throughout the outdoor education community. "Great group this year," Tyler commented, reviewing his notes from the day's activities and planning modifications for tomorrow's expanded wilderness skills workshops. "Engagement levels are high, questions are thoughtful, and safety awareness seems excellent across all age groups." Kelly agreed enthusiastically, particularly pleased with the positive attitude and cooperative spirit she had observed during hiking and group activities. The mix of experience levels is working really well. Returning campers are naturally mentoring newcomers, and everyone seems willing to try new challenges outside their comfort zones. Logan nodded, satisfied with the wildlife education progress and encouraged by the genuine interest many campers had shown in conservation concepts and scientific methodology. Several participants are asking college-level questions about ecology and wildlife biology. It's exciting to work with young people who might pursue careers in natural resource management or environmental science. The evening concluded with professional satisfaction and personal fulfillment that characterized successful wilderness education experiences for both campers and counselors who shared the commitment to excellence that made Pine Hollow such a special place for learning and personal growth. Tuesday morning, April 16th, arrived with overcast skies and cooler temperatures that required program adjustments and activity modifications designed to maintain educational effectiveness while ensuring camper comfort during changing weather conditions. Maggie emerged early to assess the forecast and coordinate appropriate responses to the approaching weather system that could bring afternoon thunderstorms and significantly cooler temperatures. The morning temperature registered 42 degrees at sunrise, with weather forecasts calling for increasing clouds, possible rain showers beginning in the afternoon, and temperatures struggling to reach the low 60s despite the previous day's pleasant conditions. The changing weather provided excellent educational opportunities for discussing mountain climate variability while demonstrating proper preparation and equipment selection for outdoor activities in unpredictable conditions. Counselors adjusted their daily schedules to emphasize covered activities and indoor programs during anticipated afternoon rain, while maintaining outdoor morning activities that would take advantage of dry conditions before weather deteriorated. The flexibility demonstrated Pine Hollow's commitment to maximizing educational opportunities, regardless of environmental challenges that were simply part of authentic wilderness experiences. Tyler modified his wilderness survival curriculum to include weather prediction techniques, emergency shelter weatherproofing methods, and clothing selection strategies that could prevent hypothermia and other weather-related problems during extended outdoor exposures. The practical applications provided immediately relevant education as campers observed weather changes developing around them. "Weather awareness is critical for wilderness safety," Tyler explained to his morning workshop group as they examined cloud formations and discussed meteorological indicators visible in the changing sky conditions. Mountain weather can change rapidly and dramatically, turning pleasant hiking conditions into life-threatening situations for unprepared individuals caught without appropriate shelter or clothing. Kelly focused her morning hiking program on shorter routes that would allow quick return to covered facilities if precipitation began earlier than forecast, while incorporating weather monitoring activities and discussion of leave no trace principles related to camping and traveling during wet conditions. Her route planning balanced educational goals with practical safety considerations that maintained program quality while protecting participant comfort and safety. Logan used the approaching weather system as an educational opportunity to discuss wildlife behavioral adaptations to changing atmospheric conditions, including feeding pattern modifications, shelter-seeking behaviors, and the heightened activity levels often observed in various species before major weather changes. His scientific perspective provided fascinating insights into animal intelligence and survival strategies. Many wildlife species possess weather prediction abilities that exceed human forecasting accuracy, Logan explained, as his group observed increased bird activity and directional movement patterns that often preceded significant weather changes. Animals respond to barometric pressure changes, wind shifts, and other atmospheric indicators hours or even days before storms arrive in their areas. The morning activities proceeded successfully despite increasing cloud cover and occasional light wind gusts that reminded everyone of the approaching weather system. Campers remained enthusiastic and engaged, while counselors demonstrated the flexibility and professionalism that allowed high-quality programming regardless of environmental conditions beyond human control. Tyler's shelter weatherproofing workshop proved particularly relevant as participants learned to modify their emergency shelters constructed the previous day, incorporating drainage techniques, wind resistance improvements, and insulation strategies that would provide adequate protection during rain and temperature drops. The hands-on learning connected theoretical survival knowledge with practical applications that could prove life-saving during actual emergencies. Kelly's hiking group practiced leave no trace camping principles while discussing the increased environmental impact that careless camping caused during wet conditions when vegetation and soil were more susceptible to damage from human activities. The education emphasized personal responsibility and environmental stewardship that extended far beyond camp experiences into lifetime outdoor recreation practices. Logan's weather prediction workshop combined traditional indigenous knowledge with modern meteorological science, teaching participants to recognize atmospheric indicators and wildlife behavior patterns that provided early warning of approaching storms or severe weather events. The integration of historical and contemporary approaches provided comprehensive education in weather awareness skills. By midday, the first scattered raindrops began falling as predicted, prompting implementation of rainy day program modifications that moved activities into covered facilities while maintaining educational focus and group engagement levels. The lodge's spacious dining hall and covered outdoor areas provided adequate space for continued programming despite the weather challenges. Lunch featured hearty comfort food, appropriate for cooler, wet conditions, beef stew, fresh cornbread, mixed green salad, and hot soup that warmed everyone while providing necessary calories for maintaining body heat during decreased temperature and increased humidity conditions. The warm, welcoming atmosphere of the dining hall created perfect conditions for community building and informal educational conversations. Afternoon programs emphasized indoor activities that maintained learning objectives while providing comfortable environments for continued wilderness education. Tyler organized primitive technology workshops that taught tool-making, cordage construction, and other traditional skills that could be practiced effectively in covered areas while rain fell outside. Kelly coordinated group activities including map and compass workshops, wilderness first aid training, and environmental awareness games that provided active learning opportunities while keeping everyone dry and comfortable. Her creative programming demonstrated the importance of maintaining flexible approaches to outdoor education that could adapt to changing conditions. Logan set up indoor wildlife education stations featuring specimens, research materials, and educational games that taught ecological principles and conservation concepts, while the group remained protected from increasingly heavy rainfall outside. His scientific resources provided in-depth learning opportunities that complemented field observation experiences conducted during better weather. As afternoon rain intensified into steady precipitation that was expected to continue through evening, councillors made decisions to modify the traditional campfire program with indoor alternatives that would maintain community building and educational objectives while ensuring camper comfort during wet, cool conditions. The adaptability demonstrated professional competence in managing wilderness programs under various environmental circumstances. Evening activities moved into the main lodge, where the large stone fireplace provided warmth and ambiance for storytelling, group singing, and educational presentations that maintained the community atmosphere associated with traditional campfire programs. The indoor setting actually enhanced intimacy and participation levels among some campers who felt more comfortable in smaller enclosed spaces. Tyler shared wilderness survival stories that emphasized the importance of mental attitude, preparation, and problem-solving skills for overcoming challenging situations in outdoor environments. His narrative approach provided entertainment while reinforcing educational messages about safety, perseverance, and respect for natural forces beyond human control. Kelly led group singing and interactive activities that built community spirit while providing opportunities for individual expression and creativity. Her musical talents and warm personality created inclusive atmospheres where every camper could participate regardless of their comfort levels or previous experience with group activities. Logan concluded the evening program with wildlife behavior discussions that connected afternoon rain observations with broader ecological concepts about animal adaptations to seasonal weather patterns and climate variations. His scientific expertise provided educational depth while maintaining presentation styles appropriate for diverse age groups and interest levels. As the evening concluded and campers prepared for sleeping in their tents during the first rainy night of their Pine Hollow experience, councillors provided extra attention to nervous participants while ensuring that everyone had appropriate clothing and equipment for staying warm and dry throughout the night. The additional support demonstrated Pine Hollow's commitment to participant comfort and safety regardless of weather conditions. Tyler, Kelly, and Logan completed extended safety rounds, checking tent integrity, drainage, and camper comfort levels, with particular attention to younger participants who might feel anxious about sleeping in canvas shelters during rain and wind conditions. Their thorough approach provided reassurance while identifying any problems that required immediate attention or equipment adjustments. The three councillors gathered briefly in the lodge after completing their safety responsibilities, discussing the day's successes and planning modifications for the following day's program pending overnight weather developments. Their professional dedication and collaborative approach ensured continued program quality while maintaining appropriate safety standards under challenging environmental conditions. Weather added an interesting educational dimension to today's programs, Tyler observed, reviewing his notes on emergency shelter performance and camper responses to primitive technology workshops. Everyone seemed engaged with the practical applications and real-time learning opportunities that came with experiencing actual weather challenges. Kelly expressed satisfaction with the group's positive attitude and adaptability during program modifications required by rain conditions. Flexible programming really paid off today. Campers stayed engaged and enthusiastic even when we had to move activities indoors and adjust schedules based on weather developments. Logan noted the excellent educational opportunities provided by the weather system for discussing wildlife behavior and ecological adaptation concepts. Observing animal responses to changing conditions provided authentic learning experiences that couldn't be replicated during perfect weather. Several campers made sophisticated connections between atmospheric changes and ecosystem responses. The evening concluded with professional confidence and personal satisfaction, despite weather challenges that had tested programming flexibility and safety management capabilities. The successful adaptation to changing conditions demonstrated Pine Hollow's commitment to excellence while providing valuable learning experiences for both campers and counselors who worked together to maintain program quality under various environmental circumstances. Wednesday, April 17th, dawned with clearing skies and significantly cooler temperatures as the weather system moved through the area, leaving behind crystalline air and spectacular visibility that revealed every detail of the surrounding mountain landscape with remarkable clarity. Maggie emerged to find frost covering the meadow grass and thin ice forming along sheltered creek edges where overnight temperatures had dropped into the upper 20s. The dramatic weather change from rain to freezing conditions overnight provided excellent educational opportunities for discussing mountain climate variability while demonstrating proper cold weather preparation and equipment selection techniques essential for wilderness safety during unpredictable mountain conditions. Campers emerged from their tents with enhanced appreciation for proper sleeping systems and layered clothing. The next stories. February 9th, 2025, polar bear drags 29-year-old pilot from crashed plane in Nunavut. The Cessna 208 Caravan single Pratt & Whitney PT6 A114, a turboprop engine, coughed twice before falling silent at 14,000 feet above the frozen expanse of Hudson Bay. Captain Aaron Michael Wallace, 29 years old with 3,847 flight hours logged in his Northern Air Transport logbook, felt his stomach drop as the propeller windmilled uselessly in the minus 42-degree Fahrenheit air. The instrument panel before him told a story of cascading failures, oil pressure dropping to zero, engine temperature climbing past redline, and fuel flow indicating a complete stoppage despite showing 3/4 full in the wing tanks. Aaron had been born in Thompson, Manitoba, to Margaret Wallace, a registered nurse at the Thompson General Hospital, and James Wallace, a mining engineer who spent most of Aaron's childhood underground in the International Nickel Company's operations. The family had moved to Winnipeg when Aaron was 12, but the call of the North never left him. After completing his commercial pilot's license at the Winnipeg Aviation Training Centre, he'd returned to Manitoba's Northern Territories, flying everything from medical evacuations to cargo runs for the scattered Inuit communities dotting the coastline of Hudson Bay. His girlfriend of 3 years, Sarah Chen, a physician's assistant at the Health Sciences Centre in Winnipeg, had been pushing him to take a job with Air Canada or WestJet, something with regular schedules and pension benefits. Aaron had been considering her proposal seriously, especially since she'd started talking about marriage and starting a family. The flight manifest for Northern Air Transport Flight 847 showed Aaron as the sole occupant of the aircraft, returning from a routine cargo delivery to Aviat. The manifest listed medical supplies, mail, and emergency provisions destined for the Rankin Inlet Health Centre. Dr. Elizabeth Kanguk, the chief medical officer at Rankin Inlet, had specifically requested the emergency antibiotics and surgical supplies Aaron carried in the cargo hold. A medevac situation had developed 3 days earlier when Thomas Tutu, a 63-year-old elder from Whale Cove, had developed severe pneumonia requiring immediate treatment that the local health station couldn't provide. The weather briefing Aaron had received at 0800 hours that morning from Environment and Climate Change, Canada's Arctic Weather Centre, indicated clear skies with light winds from the northwest at 15 knots. The forecast called for temperatures remaining steady at minus 38 degrees Celsius, with visibility unlimited and no precipitation expected. Flight Service Station Specialist Jennifer Morrison had noted that polar bear activity had been reported along the coastline near Rankin Inlet, with Parks Canada issuing a general advisory to aircraft crews about increased sightings near the community's airstrip and surrounding areas. At 13:47 hours, approximately 47 nautical miles southeast of Rankin Inlet, the engine failure occurred without warning. Aaron's hands moved through the emergency procedures he'd practiced countless times in the simulator, but had never executed in actual flight conditions. He pulled the propeller control to full feather, attempting to reduce drag on the now silent engine. The emergency procedures checklist, laminated and secured to his kneeboard, guided him through each step: mixture to idle cutoff, fuel selectors off, magnetos off, master switch off. The Cessna 208's glide ratio of approximately 9:1 meant he had roughly 8 minutes of flight time remaining before ground contact. The terrain below presented a moonscape of white, broken only by the dark lines of pressure ridges where the sea ice had buckled and folded under the immense forces of wind and current. Aaron scanned desperately for any sign of a suitable landing area, knowing that his survival depended entirely on finding relatively flat ice, free of major ridges or open leads of water. The GPS unit mounted on his instrument panel showed his position as 62 degrees 35 minutes, 14 seconds north, 092 degrees 47 minutes, 28 seconds west, placing him over Hudson Bay, approximately 12 miles from the nearest shoreline. Through his headset, Aaron transmitted his situation to Rankin Inlet Flight Service Station. Rankin Radio, Northern Air Transport 847, declaring emergency. Complete engine failure at flight level 140, 47 miles southeast of Rankin Inlet. Attempting forced landing on the ice. Souls on board 1, fuel remaining approximately 2.5 hours. The response came immediately from Flight Service Station Specialist Robert Iqaluit, whose calm professional voice provided the only human contact Aaron would have during the next critical minutes. Northern Air Transport 847, Rankin Radio copies your emergency. Search and rescue has been notified. Altimeter setting 29.85, wind at Rankin Inlet, currently northwest at 1 to 2 knots. Report when safely on the ground. Aaron's training at the Winnipeg Aviation Training Center had included extensive emergency procedures practice, but the reality of an actual forced landing differed dramatically from simulator sessions. The Cessna descended steadily at 500 feet per minute, the wind whistling past the cockpit windows, creating an eerie soundtrack to what might be his final flight. At 2,000 feet above the ice, he could clearly see the surface conditions, generally smooth snow-covered ice broken by parallel pressure ridges running roughly east-west. He selected an area between two major ridge systems, hoping the surface would support the aircraft's weight without breaking through to the frigid water below. The emergency locator transmitter, mounted behind the pilot's seat, would activate automatically upon impact, broadcasting on 121, 5 and 406 megahertz to alert search and rescue services. Aaron manually activated the ELT using the cockpit switch, ensuring the distress signal would begin transmitting immediately. His survival kit, stowed in the cargo compartment behind the passenger seats, contained the standard Transport Canada required items: sleeping bag rated to -40 degrees, emergency food rations for 7 days, flares, mirror, waterproof matches, first aid supplies, and a battery-powered emergency radio. At 500 feet above the ice, Aaron could see the surface details clearly. The landing area he'd selected showed wind-sculpted snowdrifts approximately 2 feet high, running perpendicular to his approach path. The pressure ridges to the north and south of his intended touchdown point rose 8 to 10 feet above the general ice level, creating natural barriers that would protect him from the prevailing northwest winds. The GPS indicated his ground speed at 87 knots, faster than normal due to the aircraft's clean configuration with the propeller feathered. The touchdown occurred at 13:54 hours, with Aaron maintaining 65 knots indicated airspeed. The stall warning horn silent as the Cessna's main landing gear contacted the snow-covered ice. The aircraft bounced once, settled back onto the surface, and began its slide across the relatively smooth terrain. Aaron kept the control yoke pulled full aft, maintaining weight on the main gear while the nose wheel remained off the surface. The aircraft's forward momentum carried it approximately 400 yards before friction, and the soft snow brought it to a complete stop. For the first few moments after the landing, Aaron sat in the cockpit running through his post-landing checklist, hardly believing he'd survived the emergency descent and landing. The aircraft remained upright and appeared structurally intact, though he could smell fuel indicating possible damage to the wing tanks or fuel lines. Outside the cockpit windows, the Arctic landscape stretched endlessly in all directions, an unbroken expanse of white, broken only by the parallel lines of distant pressure ridges. Aaron's first priority involved assessing his immediate situation and ensuring his survival equipment remained accessible. The cabin temperature had already begun dropping noticeably, with the engine shut down and outside air temperature at -42 degrees Fahrenheit. He retrieved his survival kit from the cargo compartment, along with the emergency sleeping bag and additional clothing he always carried during winter flights. The Emergency Procedures Manual recommended staying with the aircraft whenever possible, as its visibility to search aircraft far exceeded that of a person on foot in the Arctic environment. The emergency radio, a Bendix King KX-99 handheld transceiver, crackled to life when Aaron turned it on and selected 121.5 megahertz, the international emergency frequency. He transmitted his position and status to any aircraft monitoring the frequency. Any station, this is Northern Air Transport 847 on guard. Forced landing complete approximately 12 miles southeast of Rankin Inlet on Hudson Bay ice. Aircraft intact, pilot uninjured, requesting search and rescue assistance. The response came within minutes from a Canadian Coast Guard aircraft, conducting routine patrol operations north of Churchill. Northern Air Transport 847, Coast Guard Rescue 701. We copy your transmission and are relaying your position to Joint Rescue Coordination Center. Maintain this frequency for further contact. Joint Rescue Coordination Center. Trenton, located at CFB Trenton in Ontario, serves as the primary search and rescue coordination facility for Central and Arctic Canada. The Rescue Coordination Center's operations room, staffed 24 hours daily by trained search and rescue specialists, received Aaron's emergency notification at 13:58 hours through multiple channels. The automatic ELT signal detected by COSPAS SARSAT satellites, the pilot's radio transmissions monitored by the Coast Guard aircraft, and notification from Rankin Inlet Flight Service Station. Major Patricia Sinclair, the search and rescue mission coordinator on duty at JRCC Trenton, immediately began coordinating the rescue response. The closest search and rescue assets included a CC-130 Hercules aircraft from 435 Transport and Rescue Squadron at CFB Winnipeg, approximately 650 nautical miles south of the crash site, and CC-138 Twin Otter aircraft from 440 Transport and Rescue Squadron at CFB Yellowknife, approximately 470 nautical miles west of Aaron's position. The weather conditions, while clear, presented significant challenges for rescue operations due to the extreme cold and the remote location over sea ice. Search and rescue technician Master Corporal David Chen, a veteran of 43 rescue missions in Arctic conditions, led the 5-person SAR team that would respond to Aaron's emergency. Chen's team included SAR Tech Sergeant Lisa Blackhorse, an expert in Arctic survival and cold weather medicine, SAR Tech Corporal James Mitchell specialized in technical rescue operations, Flight Engineer Master Warrant Officer Robert Armstrong, and Aircraft Commander Major Jennifer Walsh. The team had trained extensively for precisely this type of mission. Aircraft down on ice in extreme cold, with a survivor requiring immediate extraction. The CC-130 Hercules departed CFB Winnipeg at 14:45 hours, 91 minutes after Aaron's forced landing. The four-engine turboprop aircraft carried specialized Arctic survival equipment, medical supplies, and provisions to establish a temporary survival shelter if necessary. Major Walsh's flight plan called for a direct route to Aaron's last known position, with an estimated arrival time of 16:30 hours, assuming no weather delays or mechanical issues. Meanwhile, Aaron had established his survival priorities according to his training: shelter, signaling, water, and food, in that order. The aircraft cabin provided immediate shelter from the wind, though the temperature inside continued dropping steadily. He activated several chemical heat packs from his survival kit, placing them inside his sleeping bag to create a warm micro-environment. The emergency food rations would provide sufficient calories for several days, though obtaining water in the Arctic environment required melting snow or ice, a process that consumed significant energy. By 1500 hours, approximately 1 hour and 6 minutes after the forced landing, Aaron had established radio contact with the approaching rescue aircraft and confirmed his position using the GPS coordinates displayed on his panel-mounted unit. The ELT signal provided searchers with a general location, but Aaron's radio communications allowed them to pinpoint his exact position and assess his condition. Master Corporal Chen, serving as the air-to-ground communication specialist, maintained regular contact with Aaron, gathering information about his physical condition, available supplies, and the condition of the aircraft and landing area. The ice conditions around the crash site became a critical factor in planning the rescue operation. Hudson Bay's sea ice typically reaches maximum thickness of 4 to 6 feet during February, generally sufficient to support aircraft operations if the ice remains solid without major cracks or pressure ridges. However, the dynamic nature of sea ice, constantly moving and shifting under wind and current forces, creates areas of weakness where aircraft could break through to the water below. Major Walsh and her crew needed detailed information about the ice conditions in Aaron's immediate area before attempting a landing. Aaron's reports indicated relatively stable ice conditions, with no visible cracks or leads within 500 yards of his aircraft. The snow cover, approximately 18 inches deep, had drifted into patterns that clearly showed the prevailing wind direction and provided natural wind breaks. The pressure ridges visible to the north and south of his position appeared stable, without signs of recent movement or active ice pressure that might indicate unstable conditions. At 15:15 hours, Aaron noticed movement approximately 800 yards northeast of his position. Through the aircraft's side windows, he observed what appeared to be a large white animal moving slowly across the ice in his general direction. Initially, he dismissed the sighting as possibly a seal or other marine mammal, but continued observation revealed the distinctive appearance and movement pattern of a polar bear. Aaron immediately reported the sighting to the rescue aircraft. Rescue 701, Northern Air Transport 847. I have a polar bear sighting approximately 800 yards northeast of my position, moving generally in my direction. Polar bears represent one of the most dangerous wildlife encounters possible in the Arctic environment. Adult male polar bears can weigh between 880 and 1,320 pounds, with exceptional individuals reaching 1,500 pounds or more. Their sense of smell remains incredibly acute, capable of detecting seals beneath 6 feet of ice and snow from distances exceeding 1 mile. A polar bear's presence near a crash site creates immediate and extreme danger for survivors, as the bears show little fear of humans and possess both the physical capability and predatory instinct to attack without warning. Master Corporal Chen's response to Aaron's bear sighting reflected the seriousness of the situation. Northern Air Transport 847 maintain visual contact with the bear, but do not attempt to exit the aircraft. Secure all food items and anything with strong scents. We're estimating arrival in approximately 75 minutes. Keep us informed of the bear's location and behavior. The polar bear, Aaron observed, measured approximately 10 feet in length, from nose to tail, with the distinctive cream-colored fur and black nose characteristic of adult males. The animal's movement across the ice appeared deliberate and purposeful, following a roughly straight line toward the aircraft's position. Polar bears possess exceptional navigational abilities, often traveling hundreds of miles across seemingly featureless ice to reach specific hunting areas or den sites. The bear's behavior suggested it had detected something of interest in the vicinity of the crashed aircraft. Aaron's survival training had included basic information about polar bear encounters, but the reality of observing a 1,000-plus-pound predator approaching his position created a level of anxiety no classroom instruction could duplicate. The aircraft's aluminum construction provided minimal protection against a determined bear attack, and the windows and doors represented potential entry points if the animal chose to investigate the aircraft more closely. By 15:30 hours, the polar bear had closed the distance to approximately 400 yards and showed no signs of changing direction or losing interest in the aircraft. Aaron could observe the animal clearly through binoculars from his survival kit, noting the bear's excellent physical condition and confident movement across the ice. The bear occasionally stopped to raise its head and test the air, clearly detecting scents carried on the wind from the crash site. The approaching rescue aircraft faced a complex tactical situation. Landing near the crash site with a large polar bear in the immediate area would create significant risk for the rescue team. Standard polar bear deterrent methods include noisemakers, flares, and bear spray, but these prove unreliable against determined or hungry bears. In extreme cases, lethal force becomes necessary to protect human life, though polar bears remain protected under various international agreements and Canadian federal wildlife legislation. At 15:45 hours, the polar bear reached a position approximately 150 yards from the aircraft and began exhibiting more focused interest in Aaron's location. The bear's head movements and body language indicated it had definitely detected the presence of food or other attractants associated with the crash site. Aaron's emergency food rations, though sealed in waterproof packaging, still emitted scents detectable to the bear's incredibly sensitive olfactory system. Aaron faced a critical decision regarding his immediate safety. The aircraft cabin provided some protection, but also trapped him in a confined space with limited options if the bear decided to force entry. The Emergency Procedures Manual recommended staying with the aircraft whenever possible, but made no specific provisions for polar bear encounters. Aaron decided to remain in the cockpit while maintaining radio contact with the rescue aircraft and monitoring the bear's behavior closely. The polar bear's approach pattern suggested the animal was conducting a careful investigation rather than an immediate aggressive assault. Bears typically approach potential food sources cautiously, testing the air frequently and watching for signs of movement or threat. The bear circled the aircraft at a distance of approximately 100 yards, clearly aware of Aaron's presence, but not yet committed to direct confrontation. Major Walsh's rescue aircraft reached Aaron's position at 16:27 hours, 3 minutes ahead of the estimated arrival time. The CC-130 Hercules conducted several low passes over the crash site, with crew members observing the polar bear through the aircraft's windows and documenting its size, condition, and behavior. The bear initially moved away from the aircraft when the rescue plane approached, but returned to the immediate area within minutes after the aircraft began orbiting at higher altitude. The rescue team's assessment of the situation identified several critical factors affecting the mission's success. The polar bear's presence made ground operations extremely hazardous, requiring either successful bear deterrent measures or relocation of the rescue operation to a safer area. The ice conditions appeared suitable for aircraft operations, but the risk of breakthrough remained a constant concern when landing heavy aircraft on sea ice. Aaron's reported good physical condition suggested he could potentially be moved to a safer location if necessary. Master Corporal Chen made radio contact with Aaron to discuss options for dealing with the bear situation. Northern Air Transport 847, we're going to attempt to drive the bear away from your aircraft using low passes and noise. Once we've cleared the area, we'll land approximately 200 yards from your position. Be prepared to move quickly to our aircraft when we give the signal. The bear deterrent operation began at 1640 hours with the CC-130 making progressively lower passes directly over the crash site. The aircraft's four Allison T-56A-15 turboprop engines created significant noise, and the crew dropped several noise-making pyrotechnic devices designed to frighten wildlife. The polar bear initially moved approximately 300 yards away from the immediate crash site area, but showed no signs of leaving the general vicinity entirely. Aaron observed the bear's reaction to the aircraft's deterrent attempts with growing concern. Rather than fleeing the area completely, the bear appeared to be treating the aircraft operations as a temporary disturbance that would eventually cease. The animal maintained visual contact with Aaron's aircraft while staying far enough away to avoid the immediate effects of the noise and aircraft operations. At 16:55 hours, Major Walsh made the decision to land the CC-130 on the ice, approximately 250 yards southwest of Aaron's position, placing the rescue aircraft between Aaron and the polar bear's last observed location. The Hercules touched down smoothly on the snow-covered ice, its ski-equipped landing gear designed specifically for Arctic operations. The aircraft's weight of approximately 75,000 pounds created some settling into the snow surface, but the ice remained solid beneath the aircraft. The rescue team's ground operations began immediately upon landing, with Master Corporal Chen and Sergeant Blackhorse preparing to move toward Aaron's aircraft, while Corporal Mitchell and Master Warrant Officer Armstrong remained with the Hercules to maintain security and prepare for immediate departure. The team carried polar bear deterrent spray, noisemakers, and emergency flares, though they also had access to firearms as a last resort if the bear's behavior escalated to direct threat. Aaron prepared to exit his aircraft and moved to the rescue plane, gathering his essential personal items and ensuring his survival radio remained functional for communication during the movement between aircraft. The distance of 250 yards across rough ice and snow would require approximately 5 to 7 minutes to traverse, during which time he would be completely exposed and vulnerable to bear attack. The polar bear's location at the time rescue operations commenced remained approximately 400 yards northeast of Aaron's aircraft, placing it roughly 500 yards from the landed Hercules. The animal continued to monitor the human activity, but had not approached closer than 300 yards since the rescue aircraft's arrival. This behavioral pattern suggested the bear remained curious about the situation, but had not yet committed to aggressive action. Master Corporal Chen and Sergeant Blackhorse began their approach toward Aaron's aircraft at 17:02 hours, moving carefully across the uneven ice surface while maintaining visual contact with the polar bear's position. The two SAR technicians carried full Arctic survival gear and emergency equipment, prepared for extended operations in the extreme cold if the rescue became prolonged. The temperature had dropped to -45 degrees Fahrenheit by 1700 hours, creating additional urgency for the rescue operation. Extended exposure to such temperatures could result in frostbite within minutes, and the rescue team needed to minimize the time spent outside heated aircraft. Aaron had been managing the cold successfully inside his aircraft, but movement across open ice would expose him to the full effects of the Arctic environment. At 17:08 hours, Aaron reported that the polar bear appeared to be moving closer to the aircraft cluster, closing the distance from 400 yards to approximately 300 yards. The bear's movement pattern had changed from casual investigation to more focused approach, suggesting increased interest in the human activity. Master Corporal Chen instructed Aaron to remain in his aircraft until the SAR team reached his position and could provide immediate protection during the movement to the rescue plane. The two SAR technicians reached Aaron's aircraft at 17:14 hours, establishing a secure perimeter around the Cessna while assessing Aaron's physical condition and preparing him for transport to the Hercules. Aaron appeared in good physical condition with no injuries from the forced landing, though he showed signs of stress and fatigue from the emergency situation and prolonged exposure to extreme cold. During the few minutes required to prepare Aaron for movement, the polar bear closed the distance to approximately 200 yards and began exhibiting more assertive behavior. The animal's posture and movement pattern indicated heightened interest and possible preparation for closer investigation of the human activity. Sergeant Blackhorse deployed noise-making devices and bear spray to create a deterrent barrier, while Master Corporal Chen escorted Aaron toward the waiting rescue aircraft. The movement from Aaron's aircraft to the CC-130 Hercules began at 17:18 hours, with Aaron positioned between the two SAR technicians for maximum protection. The group moved as quickly as possible across the rough ice surface, with Sergeant Blackhorse maintaining rear security and monitoring the polar bear's location, while Master Corporal Chen guided Aaron toward the rescue aircraft. The polar bear's behavior changed dramatically when the humans began moving across open ice. The animal immediately began approaching more directly, closing the distance from 200 yards to approximately 150 yards within the first minute of the rescue team's movement. The bear's movement pattern shifted from cautious investigation to purposeful approach, indicating a significant escalation in the threat level. Master Corporal Chen made immediate radio contact with the Hercules crew. Rescue base, the bear is approaching rapidly. Estimate 150 yards and closing. Prepare for immediate departure upon our arrival. Major Walsh responded by starting two of the aircraft's engines and preparing for emergency takeoff procedures if the situation deteriorated further. At 17:21 hours, when the rescue group had covered approximately half the distance to the Hercules, the polar bear broke into a direct charge toward their position. The animal's speed across the ice reached an estimated 25 miles per hour, covering the remaining distance in seconds rather than minutes. Sergeant Blackhorse turned to face the approaching bear, deploying bear spray and noisemakers while shouting warnings to her teammates. The bear spray, designed for use against black bears and grizzly bears in forest environments, proved significantly less effective against a large polar bear in windy Arctic conditions. The chemical irritant dispersed rapidly in the sub-zero air and strong wind, creating only a minor deterrent effect that slowed but did not stop the bear's approach. The noisemakers similarly produced minimal effect on an animal that had already become accustomed to aircraft operations and human activity. Master Corporal Chen pushed Aaron toward the Hercules while drawing his sidearm, a 9mm pistol loaded with standard ammunition, inadequate for stopping a large polar bear unless shot placement proved extremely accurate. The SAR technicians' training included firearms proficiency, but engaging a charging polar bear with a handgun represented an extremely low probability defensive option. The polar bear reached the rescue group's position at 17:22 hours, approximately 75 yards from the waiting Hercules aircraft. The animal's initial target appeared to be Sergeant Blackhorse, who continued deploying deterrent measures while backing toward the aircraft. The bear's massive size became apparent as it closed to within 20 feet of the human group, standing approximately 4 feet at the shoulder and demonstrating the incredible muscle mass and physical power characteristic of adult male polar bears. Sergeant Blackhorse's final deployment of bear spray occurred at a distance of approximately 15 feet, creating a chemical cloud that finally began affecting the bear's behavior. The animal slowed its approach and showed signs of irritation from the chemical irritant, but did not retreat or abandon its aggressive posture. Instead, the bear began circling the human group, looking for an approach angle that would avoid the chemical deterrent while maintaining offensive pressure. Master Corporal Chen reached the Hercules with Aaron at 17:23 hours, pushing the pilot up the aircraft's rear loading ramp while maintaining visual contact with the polar bear situation behind them. Corporal Mitchell and Master Warrant Officer Armstrong provided covering support from the aircraft, deploying additional noisemakers and preparing to assist their teammates in reaching the aircraft safely. The polar bear's attention shifted from Sergeant Blackhorse to the movement toward the aircraft, and the animal began a direct charge toward the Hercules loading ramp where Aaron and Master Corporal Chen had just reached safety. The bear's speed across the final 50 yards brought it to the aircraft's rear ramp within seconds, creating an immediate threat to the entire rescue operation. Major Walsh advanced the throttles on all 4 engines, preparing for immediate takeoff, while the loading ramp remained open and crew members still operated on the ground. The Hercules began moving forward on the ice, using aircraft momentum to create additional distance from the attacking bear, while allowing the remaining SAR technicians to reach safety. Sergeant Blackhorse reached the aircraft's loading ramp at 17:24 hours, with the polar bear following at a distance of less than 30 feet. The bear's size and aggressive behavior made it clear that further deterrent measures would prove ineffective, and the animal's proximity to the aircraft created immediate danger for crew members operating the loading ramp and rear cabin area. Corporal Mitchell, positioned in the Hercules rear cabin, made the critical decision to use lethal force to protect the rescue team and aircraft. His rifle, a standard Canadian Forces C702 assault rifle, chambered for 5.56mm NATO ammunition, represented inadequate firepower for reliably stopping a large polar bear. But the tactical situation left no alternatives. Mitchell fired multiple rounds at the bear from a distance of approximately 25 feet, achieving several hits to the animal's center body mass. The rifle rounds, while accurately placed, failed to immediately incapacitate the polar bear due to the animal's massive size and the relatively small caliber ammunition. The wounded bear became more aggressive and unpredictable, continuing its approach toward the aircraft despite sustaining multiple gunshot wounds. The animal's incredible physical resilience and pain tolerance allowed it to continue functioning effectively even after being shot multiple times. Sergeant Blackhorse reached the aircraft's interior at 17:25 hours, followed immediately by Corporal Mitchell, who continued engaging the polar bear with rifle fire, while Master Warrant Officer Armstrong operated the loading ramp controls. The bear reached the base of the loading ramp just as it began rising, bringing the animal within 10 feet of the human crew members in the aircraft's rear cabin. Major Walsh applied full power to all 4 engines, and the CC-130 Hercules began its takeoff roll across the ice surface with the loading ramp not fully secured and a wounded polar bear in immediate proximity to the aircraft. The polar bear's final attempt to reach the aircraft crew occurred as the plane accelerated, with the animal clawing at the rising loading ramp before falling behind as the Hercules gained speed and became airborne. The rescue aircraft departed the crash site at 17:26 hours with Aaron safely aboard, but left behind a wounded polar bear of unknown condition and Aaron's aircraft containing valuable cargo and equipment. The successful rescue had required the use of lethal force against a protected wildlife species, creating potential legal and political complications that would require extensive documentation and investigation. Aaron's condition upon arrival aboard the rescue aircraft appeared stable, with no apparent injuries from the forced landing or the ground rescue operation. The extreme stress of the polar bear encounter had obviously affected him significantly, but he remained coherent and responsive throughout the flight to Rankin Inlet, where medical facilities could provide thorough examination and treatment for any effects of cold exposure or psychological trauma. The flight to Rankin Inlet required 38 minutes, during which time the rescue crew maintained radio contact with medical personnel at the community's health center to coordinate Aaron's treatment upon arrival. Dr. Elizabeth Kanguk, the physician who had originally requested the medical supplies Aaron was transporting, prepared to examine him for cold injuries, dehydration, and other effects of the emergency. During the flight to Rankin Inlet, Master Corporal Chen conducted a detailed debriefing with Aaron regarding the events leading to the forced landing and the polar bear encounter. This information would become critical for the official investigation into the aircraft accident and the wildlife encounter that had complicated the rescue operation. Aaron provided detailed information about the engine failure, his emergency procedures, and his observations of the polar bear's behavior during the hours preceding the rescue. The Hercules landed at Rankin Inlet Airport at 18:04 hours, where medical personnel and Royal Canadian Mounted Police officers waited to provide immediate assistance and begin the official documentation process. Aaron was transported directly to the Rankin Inlet Health Center for medical evaluation, while the rescue crew began preparing their official reports on the successful mission and the polar bear incident. Dr. Kanguk's examination of Aaron revealed no significant physical injuries from either the forced landing or the rescue operation. His core body temperature had dropped slightly during the extended period in the unheated aircraft, but remained within acceptable limits. Blood pressure and heart rate indicated stress responses consistent with the traumatic experience, but no immediate medical intervention was required beyond observation and supportive care. The psychological impact of the emergency, particularly the polar bear encounter, became more apparent during Dr. Kanguk's evaluation. Aaron exhibited classic symptoms of acute stress reaction, including elevated anxiety, intrusive thoughts about the bear attack, and hypervigilance regarding potential threats. The physician recommended psychological support services and possible temporary suspension from flying duties pending further evaluation. Royal Canadian Mounted Police Constable Thomas Agnew began the official investigation into the aircraft accident and polar bear incident at 18:30 hours, interviewing Aaron about the sequence of events while his memory remained fresh and detailed. The investigation would eventually expand to include Transport Canada Aviation Safety Inspectors, Environment and Climate Change Canada Wildlife Officers, and insurance company representatives. Aaron's initial statement to Constable Agnew provided a minute-by-minute account of the engine failure, forced landing, and polar bear encounter. His pilot training in accurate record-keeping and attention to detail proved invaluable in establishing a precise timeline of events for the official investigation. The information would also assist wildlife authorities in understanding the polar bear's behavior and determining whether the animal posed continued threat to community safety. The immediate concern regarding the wounded polar bear required coordination between multiple agencies. Parks Canada, responsible for polar bear management in many Arctic regions, needed to determine the animal's condition and location. If the bear survived the gunshot wounds but remained in the area, it could pose significant danger to other aircraft operations or community members who might encounter it during hunting or travel activities. Environment and Climate Change Canada dispatched Wildlife Officer Jennifer Kapianak from Arviat to investigate the polar bear incident and assess the animal's status. Kapianak's expertise in polar bear behavior and Arctic wildlife management made her the lead investigator for the wildlife aspects of the incident. Her initial priorities included determining the bear's current location and condition, assessing potential threats to public safety, and documenting the circumstances that led to the use of lethal force against a protected species. The cargo remaining in Aaron's abandoned aircraft represented both value and potential attractant for wildlife. The medical supplies requested by Dr. Kanguk included antibiotics, surgical equipment, and other materials essential for treating patients at the remote health center. However, recovering the cargo would require another dangerous operation in an area where a wounded polar bear might still pose threats. Transport Canada Aviation Safety Inspector Michel Dubois arrived in Rankin Inlet at 21:45 hours aboard a scheduled commercial flight, beginning his investigation into the aircraft accident and engine failure. Dubois brought specialized equipment for examining aircraft wreckage and collecting evidence to determine the cause of the Cessna's engine failure. His investigation would ultimately determine whether mechanical failure, maintenance issues, or other factors caused the emergency. The evening of February 9th found Aaron housed in guest quarters at the Rankin Inlet Health Center under Dr. Kanguk's observation. Sleep proved difficult due to recurring thoughts about the polar bear encounter and concern for his abandoned aircraft and cargo. The reality of how close he had come to death, both from the forced landing and the bear attack, began settling in as the immediate adrenaline effects wore off. Sarah Chen, Aaron's girlfriend in Winnipeg, received notification of the emergency at 20:30 hours through Northern Air Transport's emergency contact procedures. The company's chief pilot, Captain Robert MacDonald, personally called Sarah to inform her that Aaron had survived a forced landing and been rescued safely, but provided limited details about the polar bear incident to avoid causing additional anxiety until more complete information became available. Sarah's reaction to news of Aaron's emergency reinforced her concerns about his career choice and the risks associated with flying in remote northern regions. She immediately began making arrangements to travel to Rankin Inlet to be with Aaron during his recovery and the investigation process. Her medical background as a physician's assistant would also prove valuable in assessing Aaron's physical and psychological condition following the traumatic experience. The polar bear incident generated immediate interest from news media organizations across Canada and internationally. The dramatic nature of a pilot being rescued from a polar bear attack attracted attention from television networks, newspapers, and online media outlets. However, the remote location and limited communication infrastructure in Rankin Inlet initially restricted media access to the story and the people involved. Northern Air Transport's insurance company, Aviation Insurance Brokers of Canada, began their investigation into the aircraft loss and circumstances surrounding the engine failure. The company's claims adjuster, Patricia Williams, coordinated with Transport Canada investigators and prepared to deploy a team to recover the aircraft if conditions and safety considerations permitted such an operation. The night of February 9th brought clear skies and temperatures dropping to -48 degrees Fahrenheit, creating extremely challenging conditions for any personnel who might need to return to the crash site. The wounded polar bear's ability to survive in such conditions depended largely on the severity of its injuries and whether it could continue hunting successfully to maintain the caloric intake necessary for survival in Arctic conditions. Wildlife Officer Kapianak spent the evening of February 9th coordinating with local Inuit hunters and elders who possessed extensive knowledge of polar bear behavior and the specific areas around Rankin Inlet where bears commonly traveled or hunted. Elder Joseph Agnew, father of RCMP, Constable Thomas Agnew, provided detailed information about recent bear sightings and traditional knowledge about bear behavior patterns in the region. February 10, 2025, began with continued clear weather but extreme cold, with temperatures reaching -51 degrees Fahrenheit at 0600 hours. The extreme cold created additional complications for any operations involving return to the crash site, as exposed human flesh would freeze within minutes under such conditions. Even properly equipped personnel faced significant risks during extended outdoor operations in such temperatures. Dr. Kanguk's morning evaluation of Aaron showed continued stable physical condition, but persistent signs of psychological stress related to the traumatic experience. Aaron reported difficulty sleeping due to recurring nightmares about the polar bear attack and intrusive thoughts about what might have happened if the rescue had been delayed or unsuccessful. The physician recommended continued observation and formal psychological counseling to address post-traumatic stress symptoms. Transport Canada. Inspector Dubois began coordinating the aircraft recovery operation with local authorities and aviation support services. The investigation required examination of the aircraft's engine, instruments and maintenance records to determine the cause of the in-flight failure. However, the potential presence of a wounded polar bear in the crash site area created significant safety concerns for investigation personnel. At 0800 hours on February 10th, Wildlife Officer Kapianak departed Rankin Inlet aboard a Bell 206 helicopter operated by Great Slave Helicopters, conducting aerial reconnaissance of the crash site area to locate and assess the polar bear's condition. The helicopter crew included pilot Captain David Saumur and helicopter maintenance engineer Robert Chen, both experienced in Arctic operations and wildlife observation flights. The aerial search located Aaron's abandoned Cessna 208 Caravan in good condition on the ice, with no significant damage visible from the successful forced landing. However, initial observation revealed that the aircraft had been investigated by wildlife, with tracks visible in the snow around the airplane indicating that at least one large animal had approached and possibly attempted to gain entry to the cabin. More detailed observation from the helicopter revealed disturbing evidence near the crash site. Approximately 200 yards northeast of the aircraft, the search crew observed a large, dark area on the snow surface that appeared to be blood-staining from a wounded animal. The blood trail led away from the area in a generally eastward direction, suggesting the polar bear had survived the gunshot wounds and traveled some distance before stopping. Wildlife Officer Kapianak requested that the helicopter follow the blood trail to determine the polar bear's current location and condition. The trail extended approximately 800 yards from the original crash site before reaching an area where the bear had apparently stopped for an extended period. Large amounts of blood on the snow surface indicated severe wounds, but the bear's tracks continued beyond this location toward a series of pressure ridges that would provide shelter and concealment. The helicopter search continued for 2 hours, covering a radius of approximately 5 miles around the original crash site. At 10:15 hours, the search crew located the polar bear alive but severely wounded, lying in a sheltered area between 2 large ice ridges approximately 1.2 miles northeast of Aaron's aircraft. The animal appeared alert and responsive, but was obviously suffering from significant blood loss and trauma from the gunshot wounds sustained during the rescue operation. Wildlife Officer Kapianak faced a difficult decision regarding the wounded polar bear. The animal's injuries appeared potentially survivable if left alone, but the bear's proximity to the crash site and potential aircraft recovery operations created ongoing safety concerns. Additionally, the wounded bear's behavioral patterns had become unpredictable, potentially creating danger for community members or other aircraft operations in the area. The ethical and legal considerations surrounding the wounded polar bear involved multiple jurisdictions and regulations. Polar bears are protected under the Species at Risk Act, various international treaties, and traditional Inuit hunting rights and management agreements. The use of lethal force during the rescue operation was clearly justified by immediate threat to human life, but the follow-up management of the wounded animal required careful consideration of legal, ethical, and safety factors. Elder Joseph Agnew provided valuable traditional knowledge about wounded polar bear behavior, explaining that injured bears often became more dangerous and unpredictable than healthy animals. The elder's experience suggested that the wounded bear would likely remain in the area rather than traveling long distances, as its injuries would limit mobility and hunting capability. This assessment supported Wildlife Officer Kapianak's concerns about ongoing safety risks. After extensive consultation with supervisors, veterinary specialists, and traditional knowledge holders, Wildlife Officer Kapianak made the difficult decision to euthanize the wounded polar bear to prevent prolonged suffering and eliminate potential safety threats. The helicopter returned to the bear's location at 13:40 hours, where Kapianak used a high-powered rifle to humanely end the animal's suffering. The euthanization of the polar bear, while clearly the most humane option under the circumstances, created additional complications for the overall incident investigation. Environmental groups and animal welfare organizations would likely scrutinize the decision-making process and demand detailed justification for the use of lethal force against a protected species. The incident would also require reporting to various federal and international wildlife management authorities. With the polar bear threat eliminated, planning for the aircraft recovery operation could proceed without the immediate safety concerns that had complicated earlier efforts. However, the extreme cold conditions and remote location still presented significant challenges for personnel who would need to examine the aircraft and recover the valuable cargo and equipment aboard the Cessna. Transport Canada. Inspector Dubois coordinated with Arctic Helicopter Services to schedule the aircraft examination and initial recovery assessment for February 11th, pending weather conditions and availability of specialized equipment needed for operations in extreme cold. The investigation would require detailed examination of the engine components, analysis of maintenance records, and collection of physical evidence to determine the cause of the in-flight failure. Aaron's condition on February 10th showed continued improvement in physical recovery, but persistent psychological effects from the traumatic experience. Dr. Kanguk noted that Aaron's sleep patterns remained disrupted, and he exhibited heightened startle responses to sudden noises or unexpected movements. The physician recommended extending Aaron's medical observation period and arranging for specialized trauma counseling services. Sarah Chen arrived in Rankin Inlet at 16:30 hours aboard a Canadian North flight from Winnipeg, having traveled through Yellowknife due to limited direct air service to the remote community. Her reunion with Aaron provided significant emotional support, though she was visibly shaken by learning the complete details of the polar bear encounter and rescue operation. The evening of February 10th brought media attention to the story, as details of the dramatic rescue and polar bear encounter became public through official sources and eyewitness accounts. The Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, CTV News, and various international media outlets began seeking interviews with Aaron, the rescue crew, and officials involved in the incident investigation. Aaron's initial reluctance to speak with media representatives reflected both his continued psychological recovery and uncertainty about the potential legal implications of the incident. Northern Air Transport's legal counsel advised him to limit public statements until the official investigations were completed and any potential liability issues were resolved. The recovery of Aaron's personal effects and the aircraft's cargo became a priority for February 11th operations. The medical supplies, originally destined for Dr. Kanguk's health center, remained critical for patient care, particularly the antibiotics needed to treat Thomas Tutu's pneumonia and other patients requiring advanced medical intervention. February 11th, 2025, dawned clear and cold, with temperatures at -46 degrees Fahrenheit. Still extremely challenging for outdoor operations, but slightly more manageable than the previous day's conditions. The helicopter recovery team prepared for extended operations at the crash site, including examination of the aircraft, recovery of cargo and equipment, and initial assessment of whether the airplane could be salvaged and returned to service. Transport Canada, Inspector Dubois accompanied the helicopter team to conduct his detailed examination of the aircraft's engine and systems. The investigation required careful documentation of the engine's condition, analysis of any remaining fluids or debris, and collection of components that might provide clues about the cause of the failure. The helicopter team reached the crash site at 0930 hours and immediately began establishing a secure work area around the aircraft. Initial examination revealed that Aaron's forced landing had been remarkably successful, with minimal structural damage to the airframe and no signs of fire or major component failure. The aircraft appeared recoverable if mechanical inspection revealed no fundamental structural damage. Inspector Dubois' examination of the Pratt & Whitney PT6A114A engine revealed clear evidence of internal failure involving the engine's power section. Metallic debris in the oil system and damage to turbine components indicated catastrophic mechanical failure rather than maintenance-related issues or fuel system problems. The preliminary assessment suggested a manufacturing defect or material failure rather than pilot error or inadequate maintenance. The cargo recovery operation revealed that all medical supplies and equipment had survived the forced landing intact and remained suitable for use at the Rankin Inlet Health Center. Dr. Kanguk's critical antibiotics and surgical supplies were immediately transported to the community for use in treating patients, including Thomas Tutu, whose condition had stabilized but still required advanced antibiotic therapy. Aaron's personal effects recovered from the aircraft included his pilot logbooks, navigation equipment, and survival gear that had proven essential during the emergency. The successful outcome of his emergency procedures and survival actions would likely be studied by aviation safety organizations as an example of proper emergency response and survival techniques in Arctic conditions. The aircraft recovery team completed their operations at the crash site by 1430 hours, having thoroughly documented the aircraft's condition and recovered all valuable cargo and equipment. The decision regarding whether to attempt to repair and recover the aircraft itself would depend on detailed analysis of the engine failure and assessment of repair costs versus the airplane's value. Aaron's psychological evaluation on February 11th, with Dr. Margaret Mackenzie, a trauma specialist flown in from Yellowknife, revealed classic symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder related to the life-threatening emergency and polar bear encounter. Dr. Mackenzie recommended immediate counseling intervention and potential temporary suspension from flying duties until Aaron's psychological recovery was complete. The official investigation reports began taking shape on February 11th as various agencies compiled their findings and prepared preliminary assessments of the incident. Transport Canada's aviation safety investigation would focus on the engine failure and Aaron's emergency response procedures. Environment and climate change. Canada's wildlife investigation would examine the polar bear encounter and the use of lethal force during the rescue operation. Media interest in the story continued to grow as details of the dramatic rescue became public knowledge. The combination of aircraft emergency, polar bear attack, and successful rescue created compelling human interest elements that attracted international attention. However, Aaron and the rescue crew remained reluctant to provide extensive interviews while investigations were ongoing. February 12th brought Aaron's first full interview with RCMP Constable Thomas Agnew regarding all aspects of the incident, from the initial engine failure through the rescue and polar bear encounter. Aaron's detailed account provided valuable information for the official investigation and would serve as the primary first-hand testimony regarding the sequence of events. Sarah Chen's presence during Aaron's recovery proved invaluable in helping him process the traumatic experience and begin planning for his return to normal activities. However, the incident had clearly reinforced her concerns about the risks associated with Aaron's aviation career and the isolation of northern flying operations. The preliminary findings from Transport Canada's investigation indicated that the engine failure resulted from a manufacturing defect in the power turbine section that caused catastrophic mechanical failure during normal flight operations. The defect appeared related to metallurgical problems in specific engine components, rather than maintenance issues or operational factors under Aaron's control. Wildlife Officer Kapianak's report on the polar bear incident concluded that the animal's aggressive behavior was consistent with normal predatory response to potential food sources rather than defensive territorial behavior. The bear's size and condition suggested a healthy adult male actively hunting in its normal territory rather than a problem animal displaying abnormally aggressive behavior toward humans. The successful rescue operation by the Joint Rescue Coordination Center and 435 Transport and Rescue Squadron crew became a case study in Arctic rescue operations and the challenges of conducting emergency operations in extreme cold with wildlife hazards. Master Corporal Chen and his team received commendation for their successful completion of an extremely dangerous rescue mission. Aaron's return to Winnipeg on February 14th marked the beginning of his extended recovery and rehabilitation process. The physical effects of the emergency had been minimal, but the psychological impact would require months of therapy and gradual return to aviation activities. His relationship with Sarah Chen had been strengthened by the experience, though discussions about his future career choices continued. The final Transport Canada investigation report, released 6 weeks after the incident, concluded that Aaron's emergency procedures and forced landing technique had been exemplary and likely saved his life. The engine failure was attributed to a previously unknown manufacturing defect that led to immediate changes in inspection procedures for similar aircraft engines. Northern Air Transport's insurance settlement covered the total loss of the aircraft and cargo, though the company faced increased insurance premiums due to the Arctic operating environment and associated wildlife risks. The incident prompted industry-wide discussions about polar bear encounter procedures and emergency equipment requirements for Arctic flight operations. Aaron's return to flying duties occurred 4 months after the incident, following extensive psychological counseling and gradual reintroduction to aircraft operations. His first flights were conducted with Czech pilots and in less remote areas, building confidence before returning to full northern operations. The experience had changed his approach to risk assessment and emergency preparedness, but had not eliminated his passion for northern aviation. Sarah Chen's concerns about Aaron's career ultimately led to their engagement 6 months after the incident, with the understanding that Aaron would eventually transition to less risky aviation operations closer to major population centers. The polar bear encounter had clarified their priorities and strengthened their commitment to building a future together. The polar bear's death became part of ongoing discussions about Arctic wildlife management and human-wildlife interactions in northern Canada. The incident highlighted the challenges faced by both humans and wildlife in Arctic environments where traditional territories increasingly overlap with modern transportation and communication systems. Wildlife Officer Kapianak's management of the polar bear situation received praise from both traditional knowledge holders and wildlife management professionals. Her decision-making process became a model for handling similar incidents involving wounded wildlife and human safety considerations in remote northern communities. The media coverage of Aaron's story brought national attention to the challenges and risks faced by northern aviators who provide essential services to remote communities. The story also highlighted the professionalism and dedication of search and rescue personnel who risk their lives to help others in emergency situations. Dr. Kanguk's eventual receipt of the medical supplies Aaron had been transporting allowed her to successfully treat Thomas Tutu's pneumonia and several other patients requiring advanced medical intervention. The incident reinforced the critical importance of reliable air transportation for northern communities' access to essential medical supplies and emergency services. The crash site on Hudson Bay Ice became a temporary landmark for local hunters and travelers, though the aircraft was eventually recovered during spring ice breakup operations using specialized equipment transported to the site by helicopter. The successful recovery allowed detailed analysis of the engine failure and contributed valuable information to aviation safety databases. Aaron's survival story became part of pilot training curricula at aviation schools across Canada, emphasizing the importance of emergency procedures training, survival equipment, and decision-making under extreme stress. His calm professional response during the emergency was credited with turning a potentially fatal situation into a successful survival outcome. The relationship between Aaron and the rescue crew members continued long after the incident, with annual reunions and ongoing friendships based on their shared experience. Master Corporal Chen and Sergeant Blackhorse were particularly affected by the mission and remained in contact with Aaron throughout his recovery and return to flying. Sarah Chen's medical background proved invaluable during Aaron's psychological recovery, helping him understand the normal trauma responses he was experiencing and supporting his therapy process. Her presence during the most difficult periods of his recovery strengthened their relationship and mutual commitment to their shared future. The insurance industry's response to the incident included development of new risk assessment procedures for Arctic aviation operations and enhanced requirements for survival equipment and emergency training. The polar bear encounter became a case study in wildlife risk assessment for insurance underwriters and aviation safety specialists. Transport Canada's regulatory response included new requirements for enhanced emergency locator transmitters, improved survival equipment standards, and additional training requirements for pilots operating in Arctic environments. Aaron's experience contributed to these regulatory improvements by demonstrating both successful emergency procedures and areas where additional preparation could improve survival outcomes. The environmental impact assessment of the incident concluded that the polar bear's death, while regrettable, had been necessary for human safety and had no significant effect on local bear populations or ecosystem balance. The incident became part of ongoing research into human-wildlife interactions in Arctic environments and climate change effects on polar bear behavior patterns. Northern Air Transport's operational changes following the incident included enhanced weather monitoring, improved communication procedures, and additional survival training for all pilots operating northern routes. The company also invested in upgraded aircraft maintenance procedures and engine monitoring systems to prevent similar mechanical failures. Aaron's first return visit to Rankin Inlet occurred 1 year after the incident, flying as a passenger rather than pilot to attend a community celebration honoring the rescue crew and acknowledging the support provided by local residents during the emergency. The visit provided important psychological closure and reinforced his connection to northern communities and aviation. The polar bear specimen was preserved for scientific study and educational purposes, contributing to research on Arctic wildlife biology and behavior. The animal's size and condition provided valuable data for wildlife management specialists studying polar bear populations and their interactions with human activities in Arctic regions. Elder Joseph Agnew's traditional knowledge contributions to the incident response and investigation were formally recognized by Environment and Climate Change Canada and incorporated into official wildlife management protocols. His expertise proved essential in understanding the polar bear's behavior and predicting its likely actions during the emergency situation. The helicopter crews involved in the search and recovery operations received recognition for their professional skill in conducting dangerous operations under extreme weather conditions. Their experience managing the various phases of the incident contributed to improved procedures for multi-agency emergency response in Arctic environments. Aaron's psychological recovery involved not only individual therapy, but also group sessions with other trauma survivors and emergency services personnel who had experienced similar life-threatening situations. The shared experiences and mutual support proved valuable in his healing process and return to normal activities. The incident's impact on Aaron and Sarah's relationship ultimately proved positive, clarifying their priorities and strengthening their commitment to each other. Their wedding, 18 months after the incident, included many of the rescue personnel and Northern Aviation colleagues who had supported them during the emergency and recovery period. Dr. Mackenzie's trauma treatment of Aaron became a case study in post-traumatic stress therapy for emergency services personnel and individuals who had experienced life-threatening wildlife encounters. Her treatment protocols were adopted by other mental health professionals working with trauma survivors in similar circumstances. The Federal Bureau of Investigation's Aviation Safety Network included Aaron's incident in their comprehensive database of aircraft accidents and survival stories, making his experience available to researchers, safety specialists, and pilots worldwide. The detailed documentation of his emergency procedures and survival techniques became valuable educational material for aviation safety programs. Northern Air Transport's long-term response to the incident included Aaron's eventual promotion to chief pilot, recognizing his exceptional skill in emergency situations and his contribution to improved safety procedures throughout the company. His experience and expertise became valuable resources for training other pilots in emergency response and Arctic survival techniques. The environmental monitoring of the crash site area continued for several years following the incident, tracking any changes in local wildlife behavior or ecosystem impacts related to the aircraft operations and polar bear encounter. The research contributed to broader studies of human activities' effects on Arctic wildlife populations and habitats. Aaron's story inspired several documentary productions and educational programs about Arctic aviation, survival techniques, and human-wildlife interactions in extreme environments. His willingness to share his experience publicly contributed to improved safety awareness and emergency preparedness among pilots and other professionals working in remote northern regions. The Joint Rescue Coordination Center's analysis of the mission identified several procedural improvements that were implemented system-wide to enhance the effectiveness and safety of similar rescue operations. The lessons learned from Aaron's rescue contributed to saving lives in subsequent emergencies involving aircraft down in Arctic conditions with wildlife hazards. Sarah Chen's career as a physician's assistant was influenced by her experience during Aaron's emergency and recovery, leading her to specialize in trauma medicine and emergency medical services. Her expertise proved valuable in supporting other families dealing with emergency services incidents and trauma recovery processes. The insurance settlement and investigation process established important precedents for coverage of wildlife encounters during aviation emergencies, influencing policy language and claim procedures throughout the aviation insurance industry. Aaron's case became a reference point for similar incidents involving aircraft emergencies and predatory wildlife encounters. Wildlife Officer Kapianek's professional development was enhanced by her management of the polar bear incident, leading to her promotion within Environment and Climate Change Canada and recognition as a specialist in human-wildlife conflict resolution. Her expertise became valuable for training other wildlife officers in similar incident management procedures. The community of Rankin Inlet's response to the incident demonstrated the importance of traditional knowledge and local expertise in emergency response situations. The collaboration between modern emergency services and traditional Inuit knowledge holders became a model for other Arctic communities facing similar challenges. Aaron's survival techniques and emergency procedures were analyzed by military survival specialists and incorporated into training programs for personnel operating in Arctic environments. His decision-making process under extreme stress became a case study in survival psychology and emergency response training curricula. The medical treatment Aaron received from Dr. Gunguk and subsequent specialists established protocols for treating individuals who had experienced extended cold exposure combined with severe psychological trauma. The treatment procedures were adopted by other northern medical facilities and trauma centers dealing with similar cases. The media coverage of Aaron's story brought international attention to the challenges and risks faced by aviators serving northern communities, highlighting the essential services provided by pilots like Aaron in maintaining connections between remote communities and essential resources like medical care and emergency services. The polar bear research community's analysis of the incident contributed to improved understanding of bear behavior in response to human presence and mechanical sounds like aircraft operations. The research findings influenced recommendations for reducing human-wildlife conflicts in Arctic aviation operations and community development projects. Transport Canada's final regulatory changes based on Aaron's incident included requirements for enhanced pilot training in wildlife encounter procedures, improved survival equipment standards, and mandatory emergency response planning for operations in known polar bear habitat areas. These regulations improved safety for all pilots operating in similar environments. Aaron's long-term career in northern aviation continued with enhanced focus on safety training and emergency preparedness, making him a valuable instructor and mentor for younger pilots entering Arctic aviation. His experience and expertise contributed to improved safety culture throughout the northern aviation industry. The relationship between Aaron and the people of Rankin Inlet remained strong years after the incident, with annual visits and ongoing connections that demonstrated the personal bonds formed during emergency situations. The community's support during his crisis created lasting friendships and mutual respect that transcended the original incident. Sarah Chen's adaptation to life as an aviation spouse involved learning about northern flying operations and developing her own expertise in emergency medical care relevant to aviation incidents. Her medical background became valuable for supporting Aaron's career while maintaining awareness of associated risks and safety considerations. The environmental impact study following the incident contributed to broader research on Arctic ecosystem resilience and the effects of human activities on wildlife populations in northern Canada. The findings supported ongoing conservation efforts and wildlife management policies designed to balance human needs with environmental protection. Aaron's story became part of the cultural heritage of northern aviation, joining the collection of legendary survival stories and heroic rescues that inspire and educate future generations of pilots and emergency services personnel. His experience demonstrated the importance of training, preparation, and professional competence in overcoming extreme challenges. The technological improvements in emergency equipment and aircraft systems that resulted from Aaron's incident contributed to enhanced safety for all northern aviation operations. The lessons learned from his experience continued to influence equipment design, training procedures, and operational protocols years after the original incident. The psychological research based on Aaron's trauma and recovery experience contributed to improved understanding of post-traumatic stress responses in emergency situations and the factors that promote successful recovery and return to normal activities. His case became valuable for treating other individuals who had experienced similar life-threatening encounters. Aaron Wallace's survival of the February 9th, 2025 polar bear incident near Rankin Inlet became legendary within the northern aviation community, demonstrating that proper training, good decision-making, and exceptional emergency response by rescue services could overcome even the most challenging and dangerous situations in the Canadian Arctic.